Chapter 381, Witch's Homunculus. Every passing second in the western region of the Ultras continent carried enormous weight. Ultras forces had been strategically deployed throughout the western zone, chosen to host the final phase of the Witch's game. Players had taken their positions, awaiting the signal. From the east, Godfrey's army was slowly advancing toward their objective. But strangely enough, neither Godfrey himself nor his Empyrean Gvardiel were seen among the troops. From the south, a different army marched, a terrifying force of 1,000 elite warriors from the High Blood, many of them rank S, armed to the teeth with deadly gear. They were the Southern Hammer of Ultras, commanded by none other than Murgo's closest follower, Lawrence, a wild beast in the body of a man-child, hardly suitable for command. No one in the Ultras army knew how to deal with him, so they chose to follow from a distance, careful not to provoke him. After all, the only one who ever tamed that monster was Murgo. Lawrence didn't understand the complex strategies his master used to discuss. He only knew one thing: march to the marked destination. Ultras had gathered enough force to spark a full-scale war against the Empire itself. Yet their target was not a rival army. It was something else entirely. The direction they were marching toward was the very location of Phoenix Sunlight's group. And that fact was all too clear to Ghost Umbra, who had been slipping through the shadows for days now, searching for Fry. But instead of finding his friend, the silent killer had stumbled upon something else entirely. Lethal armies, terrifying warriors gathered for one purpose: annihilation. And the ones they were meant to annihilate were none other than the elite class. If Phoenix and his group were to face an army like that head-on, not even their strength would be enough to survive. Between finding his missing friend, whose fate remained uncertain, dead or alive, and returning to warn the others, Ghost Umbra stood at a crossroads. He had seen with his own eyes what the enemy had prepared for them. I still have Selena's mark. I can catch up to them if I move at full speed. As long as he carried that mark, he could always track the others. Unlike Fry, who had no way to find his team. And so, Ghost made his decision. Return. Warn them. Blending into the shadows once more, the silent killer dashed off, retracing his path toward the group he had left behind. He had to reach them quickly. Only then could he resume his search for Fry. For a brief moment, dark thoughts clouded his mind. Why would the Ultras deploy such a powerful army just to wipe out a class of students? But he didn't have long to dwell on it. His instincts flared. Danger was incoming. He immediately leapt to the side, barely avoiding a massive sword that had pierced through his shadow without resistance. Ghost tumbled back, colliding with a giant boulder. As he scanned his surroundings for the attacker, he found him. Or rather, the man made no effort to hide himself to begin with. Standing atop the hilt of his greatsword, planted deep in the ground, was a man Ghost had never seen before. Orange hair, gold teeth, a lightning-charged aura dancing around him. Draxler. He smiled down at Ghost as he gripped the sword and pulled it free from the earth, crackling sparks following his every move. There you are, you little runaway rat. Cloaked in his deadly aura, Draxler walked toward Ghost, who now held his daggers, ready for combat. You really should have stayed put and played your role in the Witch's game. The Witch's game? Ghost asked, unsure of what he was talking about. Draxler chuckled mockingly. Your little detour nearly messed up the entire game, so we had to improvise. Looks like your fight starts earlier than the rest. He spoke casually, as if talking to a friend, not an enemy. That carelessness gave Ghost the opening he needed. In a flash, he lunged forward, his daggers just inches away from Draxler's neck. But Draxler caught both blades with his bare hands and flashed his golden grin once more. In such a hurry to die, assassin? And in less than a second, Ghost felt his chest collapse under the weight of a devastating kick. He was sent flying, again crashing into a boulder and coughing up blood. He tried to rise, but his body barely responded. With one hand on his chest, Ghost quickly estimated the damage, at least 3 to 4 broken ribs. The power difference was overwhelming. Ahaha. Beatrice is the worst, man. Always making me clean up the mess her little game leaves behind. With a casual swing, Draxler unleashed a massive wave of lightning. It obliterated the ground Ghost had stood on just moments before, leaving behind a smoking crater of utter destruction. Ghost barely dodged it. But he knew. Draxler wasn't even trying yet. You keep ranting about this dumb game. What the hell are you even talking about? Ghost asked, drawing a pair of violet glowing daggers from his shadow, SS-ranked weapons he had retrieved from Launder. He knew he couldn't win unless he gave everything he had. But Draxler didn't seem concerned. It was as if he had already accepted the outcome. You want to know what the witch's game is? Whoosh! Draxler vanished, reappearing to Ghost's right mid-swing, lightning surging along his blade. But Ghost narrowly dodged and retreated back. It's the game that will decide your friend's fate, assassin. And it's already begun. Boom! The ground around them exploded in a storm of electricity as Draxler unleashed serpents of lightning, hissing and crashing toward Ghost, who dodged every strike with expert precision. Look forward to it, boy. Draxler laughed as more of his deadly aura flared. It'll be one hell of a game. Busy fighting for his life, Ghost could no longer warn the others. They were now walking blind into the unknown. Far from where Ghost and Fry struggled alone in the western reaches of the Ultras continent, Phoenix and his team had finally reached the gate marked on their map. After traveling over 100 kilometers while avoiding enemy patrols, they had made it. They had finally arrived. That colossal gate. Their only way back home stood before them. Finally! Scarite Sunlight collapsed to the ground, overwhelmed by the realization that they were actually about to leave this cursed land behind. Don't lower your guard. We're not home yet. Phoenix's voice was firm as he motioned to Selena to inspect the gate. The map had been accurate, too accurate to be a trap, but the risk of being attacked before activating the teleportation remained high. Selena, without delay, began casting a spell to modify the gate and accelerate the transfer process, aiming to return them to the Empire as quickly as possible. The whole operation would only take a few minutes, allowing everyone to breathe a little easier. Once the gate is activated, all of you will leave as agreed, while I go back and retrieve Ghost Umbra. Is that clear? His words were directed at Snow and the others, who had previously insisted on staying behind to wait. But Phoenix had convinced them otherwise. He promised to bring Ghost back himself. Once they were gone, he could use the witch's mark in his possession to instantly locate Ghost. With only one person to worry about, Phoenix believed he could rescue him swiftly, fly him home if need be. In the end, the young Lord of House Sunlight had managed to persuade them all, Danzo, Sansa, and even Snow. None of them were truly convinced. But they could do nothing except follow the plan they had all agreed to. Now they stood before the gate, their only path home. I don't like this, Danzo muttered with a scowl, folding his arms as he stared at the gate, now glowing with Selena's magic. Returning while others are left behind, walking through this gate and leaving so easily, is all just too simple, too convenient for a land as brutal as this one. Felt wrong, too easy. Could they really escape this continent so effortlessly? Danzo was uneasy, deeply so. Snow Lionheart, gripping his sword tightly, didn't disagree. We have no other choice. This is the only path forward. Aside from the map they had previously found, there was no clue where else to go. Following it was their only option. Snow hadn't wanted to leave in the first place, but he suppressed his emotions for the sake of the group, not wanting to cause unnecessary trouble. And so, one by one, they found themselves standing before the gate, glowing with a swirling white light. It worked, everyone! Selena shouted joyfully as she completed the activation. Once this gate links to its counterpart in the Empire, the Imperial mages will recognize my magic and open the way. We can finally go home. Hope surged through the group, who had spent what felt like an eternity in the hellscape of the Ultras continent. We can finally go back. Standing at the gate, Sansa Valyrian froze, lost in thought. What's wrong, Sansa? Adriana stepped up beside her, a warm smile on her face. We're finally going home. Why the long face? Adriana. Sansa sighed, trying to convince herself that everything was fine. This is the second time I've run away from this place since I was first kidnapped. I just can't shake the strange feeling growing in my chest. Like all roads are somehow leading me back here, back to the Ultras continent. As Sansa spoke her thoughts aloud, Phoenix began ordering the group to pass through the gate. One by one, they began stepping forward. Only Adriana and Sansa remained behind. Adriana smiled. You're right, Sansa. Sansa turned to her, puzzled, as Adriana's gaze remained fixed on the glowing gate. All roads do lead back here, to the Ultras continent. Including this one. What are you talking about? It's a trap. What? Didn't you hear me? It's a trap. One that will take us all into the final stage of the game. Adriana's warm smile twisted into something else. Something sinister. At the same moment, the gate's white glow suddenly turned blood-red and pulled everyone inside without warning. This is the witch's game after all. As the red light consumed them like a black hole, Adriana's body glowed as well, revealing a violet dress and a refined hat atop her head. Her once gentle smile transformed into something far more terrifying. Only she and Sansa remained outside the gate, which had just swallowed everyone else whole, triggering the magical trap Beatrice had prepared from the very beginning. What's wrong, Sansa? Key. Adriana laughed wickedly as Sansa stood frozen in shock. Standing before the crimson vortex, you look like you've seen a ghost. And with those words, everyone had been teleported. Each person, alone. Each sent to a different place. Each facing a chosen opponent waiting just for them. Phoenix Sunlight stood before Godfrey. Cerys Moonlight came face to face with a man she hadn't seen in a long time, Baelor Moonlight. Snow Lionheart faced the masked figure V, his old nemesis. Ragna Claude stood opposite Lawrence, the man who murdered his father. Dawn Polaris found himself confronting a strange woman he had never seen before. Demon Valyrian encountered two S-class warriors of the High Blood. Each had met their destined enemy. And with that, the final round officially began. The elite class's last struggle had begun. Chapter 382. Battles of Life and Death 1. After 15 days of hell in the nightmare land of the Ultras, the elite class finally reached the gate that was supposed to lead them home. Selena had no trouble casting her spell and linking the portal to the Empire. She was confident. They were going to make it. The map hadn't been a lie. Such maps couldn't be tampered with. They were created years ago with unchangeable magic. But the trap was much simpler than they ever imagined. Beatrice hadn't altered the map. She had merely guided them step by step toward the destination she had chosen, setting her trap right in front of the gate. I couldn't teleport you all while Phoenix was still nearby, so I had to draw you here, where my spell was already waiting. Adriana rose slowly into the air. Her clothes transformed into a luxurious violet gown. Her hairstyle changed completely, and a graceful witch's hat now adorned her head. The trap had been inevitable. It swallowed them all. Everyone except for Adriana and Sansa, who stood alone together. Adriana, you're the traitor. Sansa's voice trembled, unable to process what was unfolding. Adriana had always been that timid, quiet girl, afraid of her own shadow. She had lived with them for 2 years in the temple, suffered alongside them, fought to survive with them. When the Ultras attacked, during the island trial, the Victoriad, Adriana had been right there with them. No need for that face, Sansa. Beatrice, now speaking through Adriana's body, smiled, revealing the wicked grin she had kept hidden all this time. Adriana Hadjivorn hasn't existed in a long, long time. I killed her myself. Before you even entered the temple. Then I created this sweet little doll, a homunculus, to infiltrate your ranks and build a false identity. From the beginning, every reaction Adriana had Every awkward moment, every lie. It had all been a performance directed by Beatrice. Why? Sansa unleashed her shadow powers, finally beginning to grasp the scale of the betrayal. Why would you go this far? Using her shadows, she lunged at Adriana, but the witch effortlessly dodged, vanishing and reappearing with a flash of speed that resembled teleportation. Why? For this game, of course. Adriana raised her hand, conjuring dozens of violet celestial spheres that began floating around her. This is the grand culmination of the witch's game. The spheres fired in rapid succession towards Sansa, who responded by shaping barriers from her shadows to deflect the magical barrage. But her defenses barely held under the sheer force Adriana unleashed through her puppet. One game that shook an entire world. A game that warped destinies and led the future into chaos. There's no greater show, nothing more satisfying than this. A spectacle that could even entertain him. Adriana cackled with wild laughter, the truth finally coming to light. She was the one who had orchestrated the invasion, turning the Empire and Ultras against each other. She had lured the new generation and forced the old one out of hiding. For years, she had quietly woven her web, playing the long game with perfection. The western region of the Ultras continent was now surrounded on all sides by enemy armies, while the players had been scattered across the center. Everyone will face their chosen opponent, whether it's someone they want revenge on, or someone who matches their strength. And if not, then fate will decide. Luck will determine who lives and who dies. Adriana continued firing relentlessly, her magical orbs bombarding Sansa, who struggled to keep up. Behind them, the gate shattered completely. The land crumbled beneath their feet. They'll fight each other to the death. Escape is no longer an option. The armies are on the move. And they'll be here in just 1 hour. In other words, even if some from the elite class survived their individual battles, they would still have to face the incoming armies.
No gate.
No exit. Only death. A final game of survival where each would fight until their last breath. You're insane, Sansa whispered, horror etched into her face. The land of Ultras was about to become their grave. Don't be like that, Sansa. Aren't we friends? That's exactly why I made myself your opponent. Adriana pulled out a slender wand and smiled wickedly. This doll is the weakest of all my homunculi, so your chances aren't zero. Give it your all, dear Sansa. As the witch revealed her true strength without holding back, the princess clenched her fists, fury rising within her. Dark celestial spheres formed around her. Enormous shadow tendrils writhed behind her. I'm going to wipe that disgusting smile off your face. That's the spirit. Adriana laughed maniacally. And so it began. A war of fire and shadows erupted between the two, both women unleashing torrents of aura and clashing with ferocious might. The first battle had officially begun. Sansa Valyrian versus Adriana Hadjivorn. The portal swallowed everyone, and each of them found themselves facing their chosen opponent. However, some had been standing too close together, so they were transported as pairs. Snow Lionheart had no idea what just happened. When he opened his golden eyes again, he found himself standing in a place completely different from where he'd been moments ago. As he turned around, he spotted Lara Croft, who had clung to him when the red portal engulfed them both. Lara! Snow's mind raced, trying to make sense of what had just occurred, while Lara stood up in concern, scanning their surroundings. What happened? That's the damn question I'm trying to answer. Snow's voice carried frustration. Did something go wrong with the portal? A mistake from Selena? He tried to stay optimistic, but immediately dismissed the thought. No, this wasn't a mistake. He had seen it with his own eyes, the way the portal turned red before swallowing them whole. It's a trap. Snow's usually calm face twisted with fury, startling Lara where she stood. You're right, hero of the Empire. Aside from Snow and Lara, there was a third person at that location. Snow slowly turned toward the voice, his golden eyes flaring brightly. And there he was, A figure Snow hadn't seen in a long time, standing in wait. Wearing the same mask, the same dark armor that radiated a cursed aura. The masked man, V, had returned. You again. Both Snow and V began walking toward each other slowly, their auras pressing against one another like two forces of nature. I see you've grown stronger since last time, said V in a serious tone, far removed from the mocking one he had used in the past. I could say the same about you, Snow replied. The pressure radiating from V was far more intense than it had been a year ago, during the Ultra's raid on the temple. Snow Lionheart, who had grown immensely in power, and V, who had mastered the SSS-ranked Marva's contract. V summoned his Moonlight Sword, the same weapon from their last fight. Snow, in turn, called forth Vermithor, his blade blazing with sacred aura. Don't think for a second this will go like last time, Snow warned, unleashing his full power and bloodthirst that he had suppressed until now. I'll bury you right here. Oh? Grown cocky. Have you, hero of the Empire? Just because you got your hands on one of the legendary swords. V replied coldly, shrouding himself in writhing black flames as his aura surged beyond even Snow's. You'll all die here. Their clash of auras and killing intent was so intense that Lara Croft could only stand aside, helpless to interfere. Run, Lara. Get as far away as you can while I kill this bastard. Snow! She reached out to him, but the violent burst of aura from both warriors sent her flying backward. She screamed, trying to steady herself. War King form, Snow roared, just as V echoed back. Berserker form. Snow transformed into a killing machine, his body covered in glowing golden runes, while V was cloaked in burning black armor, madness seizing his gaze as his eyes turned fully white. And then, without warning, the two of them lunged. The Moonlight Sword clashed with Vermithor in a deafening explosion of metal. Snow pushed his star aura to the limit, while V unleashed his cursed black flames. They roared as they fought, clashing with ferocity that turned the battlefield into a whirlwind of blades. Black fire versus star aura. The cursed moonlight versus the sacred Vermithor. Their battle was utter chaos. Snow twisted the terrain beneath V, trying to bury him alive, but the masked man shattered the ground and soared out, only to be met by a volley of massive ice spears hurled by Snow. V shattered them one after another, firing black flames without pause, until Snow descended from the sky and crashed into him, sending them both smashing through a mountain. Vermithor left trails of light in the air from its sheer speed as Snow struck again and again, trying to bury V deeper into the rock. Rea Weawa! V screamed wildly. An eruption of black fire burst from within his body like a dam breaking, launching Snow backward. The dark flames surged like a tidal wave, with V at the center, aiming to consume Snow whole. But Snow, too, pushed past his limits, his golden runes glowing brighter than ever as he prepared for the next clash. Unleashing a terrifying surge of star aura, Snow clashed with V once more. Blow after blow, they exchanged strikes without pause, uncaring of the blood that spilled from their battered bodies. V's dark fire burned through Snow's starborn energy, trapping him completely. Taking advantage of that, the masked man launched wave after wave of dark flames, trying to kill his opponent and incinerate him alive. But then, Snow let out a roar unlike any before, and began his counterattack with reckless fury. A wave of star aura, then another of lightning, then a third of devastating blue fire. Earth, light, darkness. The hero of the Empire unleashed his full arsenal of elemental power without restraint, pushing back V's dark flames and matching him blow for blow. You're not winning this time. Then show me what you've got. Boom! Explosion after explosion shook the land. This wasn't a battle. It was a natural disaster unleashed upon the earth. Lara Croft barely escaped in time, having been caught in the epicenter of their clash. Both V and Snow. They've lost their minds. Two raging beasts, unleashing aura with output at SS rank and rising, Lara realized that a single stray attack from either of their swords would end her life instantly. As their roars echoed and their battle made the very ground scream for mercy, thus began a mad duel between two heroes, each forged in a different world. The second round had begun, headed toward an unknown conclusion. Snow Lionheart versus the Masked V. Chapter 383. Battles of Life and Death, 2. Life was strange. It often gave you chances, only to take them back at the same time. Up until now, Ceres Moonlight had lived her life trapped inside a black box since childhood. She had been manipulated, robbed of so much, and now, her cold heart burned once more with the fire of revenge. I wanted vengeance with every fiber of my being. Revenge against the one who took my family from me, who turned my father into a heartless monster, and stole my elder sister away. Baylor Moonlight, in his pursuit of the title of Lord, he committed a crime so vile it would forever stain the history of the Empire. I wanted to kill him, but I knew this fire was fleeting, a hollow goal that would one day lead me astray. Ever since learning the truth, Ceres Moonlight had sought change. So rather than drowning in revenge, I chose to become stronger, faster, better. After the incident that unveiled the truth behind House Moonlight, Ceres had pushed herself beyond her limits, honing every skill she had, using her darkest emotions as fuel to keep going. I'll become far stronger than I am now, strong enough to make sure something like that never happens again. And when I finally gain that strength, my revenge will come naturally. Those were the thoughts of Ceres Moonlight, the first-class wave controller who created forms capable of matching knights and swordsmen in direct combat. She had grown far beyond what she once was. But life always takes unexpected turns. The red portal had swallowed her alone, flinging her into a dark cave. But her sky-blue eyes saw clearly through the gloom. There, deep in the cave, sat a man, wearing the same armor she'd seen him in last time. His blue hair slicked up toward the sky. Rising to his feet with a twisted grin, the former Lord of House Moonlight greeted her. "It's been a while, my dear daughter." Hearing those words, Ceres Moonlight couldn't suppress the inferno inside her. It erupted violently. "Baylor!" With a furious scream, her body lit up as a frozen armor formed around her, masking her face and giving her the appearance of a phantom-like ninja. Her glowing blue eyes narrowed into a death glare, eyebrows furrowed in seething rage. Baylor chuckled softly, scratching his head in mock irritation. "I see you despise me deeply. How tragic." Boom! The two began manipulating ice at incredible speed. Ceres hurled massive ice swords at him. Baylor blocked them effortlessly with an icy wall. He laughed when she charged forward, her frozen armor massively boosting her speed. "You've grown quite a lot, Ceres." He seemed genuinely proud of his niece. Ceres, wielding two gleaming frost blades, slashed at him while simultaneously manipulating celestial bodies to strike from afar. Her refined combat style allowed her to fight from any range, breaking the old belief that wave controllers should only battle from a distance. The difference in strength between them was immense. Baylor, an SS rank, parried her blades with the back of his hand. As for the celestial projectiles she hurled at him, he raised simple ice barriers that effortlessly nullified them. "It's pointless, Ceres. This fight is meaningless." "Shut up." Ceres continued her assault, but Baylor blocked everything she threw at him with infuriating ease, like an adult toying with a helpless child. "You shouldn't be fighting me like this, Ceres." With a casual wave of his hand, Baylor unleashed a wave of aura that blasted Ceres into the cave wall with bone-shattering force. She hit the ground with a muffled scream, pain searing through her spine as she felt her bones crack beneath the weight of that single strike. "There's no need to hate me, my dear daughter. Everything that happened to you was nothing but a bad dream." Baylor strolled toward her with that same infuriating smile still plastered across his face. "I'll rebuild it, our happy family. What was destroyed by outside hands. Then we'll live the dream again. A dream you'll be a part of." Listening to his madness, Ceres slowly rose to her feet. After everything you did, you still dare to speak of the family you destroyed yourself. Ice began to form around her once more, only to shatter immediately, crushed by Baylor's control over the very element she tried to wield. I wasn't the one who destroyed it. Our family saw its golden age under my rule. With another flick of his hand, Baylor unleashed a devastating blast that smashed Saris into the wall once again, forcing blood from her lips. Do you blame me for what happened to Drogo? That was war between him and me. I won. He lost. I became Lord while he was buried, marked forever as the man behind the greatest massacre in the Empire's history. I won. And what of my siblings who died for your victory? The hanged bodies swinging from trees, the death trap you forced us to live in. Recalling the massacre she had survived, Baylor sighed in annoyance. A price that had to be paid, for a greater purpose. So that's how it is. Face darkened. Saris surged to her feet again and attacked the former Lord of House Moonlight with everything she had. Swords, spears, celestial projectiles blazing with fire. She tried everything. Nothing worked. I'll soon become one of the lords of the Ultras, dear Saris. Hhhh. Baylor deflected her strikes while steadily closing the distance between them. Then we'll destroy the Empire and build a new family. One far stronger than the ashes we left behind. A family with you, and my son, Frost. He laid bare his selfish ambitions, but Saris replied coldly. So you still remember your only son. And here I thought you were nothing more than a filthy beast who knew only how to destroy. Boom! Even filthy beasts like you, Baylor, seem to care for their offspring. Saris continued her assault as Baylor deflected her attacks, walking closer and closer until he stood right in front of her. Of course I care. He's my only son. And my father Drogo cared for us too. But you stole everything from him. Saris's aura surged. Ice rapidly built upon itself, forming a massive frozen flower that exploded outward, shattering the cave and exposing the starless night sky above. It was a devastating attack, but Baylor walked through it unharmed. He emerged right in front of her, just inches away. It's useless. Your attacks won't reach me, no matter what you do. His cold, terrifying eyes met hers. Saris didn't flinch. She simply raised her hand and placed it flat against Baylor's chest. Blood trickled from her forehead, and her frozen armor had already begun to fracture under the weight of his previous blows. But the fire inside her never once dimmed. I'll gladly die if it means I can end your life, you rotten lord. Baylor listened with a blank stare. The gap in strength was far too great. He could kill her in an instant if he wished. I told you, Saris, it's point H. He didn't even realize what had happened. Blood exploded from his mouth as he was hurled back, crashing into the solid stone behind him. Staring down at his chest, Baylor's eyes widened in shock. A white serpent had pierced clean through him, dark red blood dripping in torrents. The serpent slithered back at once, joining a swarm of others that now encircled Saris. Ice formation. Abyssal serpent. The serpents hissed, slithering across every surface, radiating a terrifying, frigid presence. Baylor felt it, the monstrous power now emanating from Saris Moonlight. She extended her right hand. Her ice armor had shattered from it, revealing pale white skin marked with strange tattoos, spikes and frozen flowers, and wreathed in glacial white flames. Come, Baylor Moonlight, I'll drag you with me into the abyss of oblivion. With every ounce of power this body can unleash, even if it meant her death. Saris Moonlight had made her decision. She would kill that man, no matter what it took. Baylor, for his part, unleashed his true aura in response. The time for words had ended. The third round had begun. Saris Moonlight versus Baylor Moonlight. A battle between kin whose hearts had frozen long ago. A battle of life and death, poised to shake the entire continent and cast a long shadow over the dark future to come. Chapter 384. Blood of the Close Ones 1. There was no doubt anymore. The witch's game had delivered its verdict. and to call it a game would be a mistake. It was a massacre. One that toyed with the lives of a young generation burdened with the weight of great expectations. Among the players on the side of the Ultras, Gavid Linman sat quietly, now wearing a pristine white suit. His body had recovered from the wounds he sustained during the battle against Astaroth. His cold eyes were fixed on the young challengers who had just appeared before him out of nowhere. The Lord of the Ultras muttered, "Why did I even agree to take part in this ridiculous game?" Linman had originally planned to eliminate the elite class in one swift stroke. But due to a certain agreement with Beatrice, he found himself forced to participate. As a mere player, following the whims of a witch, he moved toward the designated battlefield given to him and waited patiently for his opponent, only to be met with the appearance of the twins. Scarite Sunlight and Ivan Sunlight. Both were painfully weak, so much so that they hadn't even realized the true magnitude of the monster standing before them. Linman's eyes darkened, fury buried behind a silent scowl. "Who are you? Where are we?" Scarite summoned flaming orbs around her while hiding behind her brother, who drew his sword with shaky hands. Gavid sighed and leapt down from the rock he had been sitting on. "I'll tell you who I am." He advanced slowly, ignoring Scarite's shouted warnings to stop. Her burning orbs struck him, only to pass straight through his body as if he weren't there at all. A look of pure disgust twisted Linman's face. "I am death." His sword, invisible to them, had already chosen its target, Scarite. Her shrieking had annoyed him. Ivan didn't even realize what had happened until blood splattered across his face. When he turned to his sister, he found her collapsing in slow motion. Her face cleaved cleanly in half, horizontally. Linman's strike had been so precise that her eyes and brain took a moment to slide apart, splattering across the ground, forming a crimson froth at Ivan Sunlight's feet. He stared at his twin's corpse, unable to comprehend what had just happened. Ivan didn't feel rage, nor did he feel any desire for revenge. What he felt was something entirely different, and Gavid Linman recognized it instantly. The moment he saw yellow liquid trickling down Ivan's leg, he had wet himself. Pathetic and revolting. "No!" Ivan Sunlight, the boy who rarely ever spoke and always hid behind his sister, found himself crawling away, dragging his urine-soaked trousers behind him. But he didn't get far. A flash of light struck him without warning, and he collapsed. He looked down at his legs, which were now radiating unbearable pain, only to discover both had been cleanly severed. Blood, piss, and tears. Ivan Sunlight flooded the ground with the fluids of defeat while Gavid let out another sigh of contempt. "You were going to die either way, but couldn't you at least die with a shred of dignity, filthy rat? Please, don't." Ivan begged, trying to cling to Linman's clothes, and that only made him angrier. Gavid's arm moved with inhuman speed. He cut through Ivan's body dozens, no hundreds of times, reducing him to a pile of tiny, bloody cubes, erasing any trace of who he once was. Disgusting. With a flick of his blade, Gavid sent the blood flying off its edge and walked away from the battlefield, now painted red by the witch's twisted game. The Lord of the Ultras had become a free player. His eyes now shifted toward the next arenas. "Let's end this farce already." He took off in a blur, determined to wipe out the rest of the elite students. But then he stopped. The magical communication crystal he always carried began to glow. When he looked at the caller ID, his eyes narrowed. It was his partner in crime, Murgo. Reading the message left behind by the Lord of the Dark Hive, Gavid's eyes widened for just a second, before he regained his calm and changed direction, this time moving even faster, but toward a different destination.
Gavid Linman vs. Scarite và Ivan Sunlight.
The battle ended before it ever truly began. There are many reasons a person might live, many motivations that keep the heart beating. But among them all, revenge stands out as one of the most powerful. The death of a loved one, the loss of something precious. In Ragnar Claude's case, it was the death of his father. Since arriving on the Ultras continent, he had been consumed by a single desire: vengeance. A raging fire devoured his heart, turning him into a beast, a monster that thirsted only for revenge. Danzo had once managed to calm the raging fire within him, steering him off that path, at least temporarily. But the red gate that devoured him showed no such mercy. It threw him directly into the path of the one person he should never have encountered: Ragna, lying in the middle of a vast, barren plain. He rose, gripping his colossal weapon, Villainous, the Spear of Storms. His eyes had turned blood-red, veins bulging violently under the pressure of the wind aura swirling around him. Standing before him was a pale young man with short white hair, deep black eye bags, and a disfigured face. His fingers were so thin they resembled bones. It was Lawrence, taken aback by the sudden appearance of a stranger. But Lawrence wasn't the true problem. It was the army of 1,000 men standing behind him. The pressure of their collective aura fell like a waterfall on Ragna's broad shoulders. His body was nearly crushed into the ground as he realized the absurd difference in numbers and power. Yet he didn't take a single step back. His eyes were locked solely on Lawrence. What's going on here? What is this? Lawrence scratched his head in confusion. A stranger appears out of nowhere, and he's desperate to kill me? This is great. The Ultras warrior laughed, then abruptly stopped. His gaze narrowed as he examined Ragna more closely. But who are you? Have we met? He asked cheerfully, but Ragna's furious roar shook the air as he stabbed his spear into the ground, summoning a wild gust. Lawrence! I can hear you just fine, no need to yell. Lawrence casually cleaned his ear with a finger, unfazed by Ragna's outburst. Today, I'll avenge my father, the one you murdered with your own hands, Isaac Claude. Ragna unleashed all his power, pouring it into the storm spear as he prepared to lunge. Lawrence, on the other hand, only grew more confused. Isaac? Who's that? Unable to recall the man he had killed, he rubbed his head, trying to place the name. My lord, let us handle him. Two Ultras warriors cautiously stepped forward. From their aura, it was clear they had surpassed at least rank S. Despite that, they showed Lawrence the utmost respect. He's too weak. Not worth your time. They wanted to finish it themselves, but Lawrence waved them off with a broad grin. No. He wants me. Ahaha. He wants to kill me. He cackled maniacally, the strange black markings crawling across his twisted skin. Seeing that, the two Ultras warriors backed away and returned to the formation, uneasy expressions on their faces. Meanwhile, Ragna charged forward, consumed by the storm, aiming directly at his father's killer. And in less than a second, a violent explosion erupted. Wind howled, forming a raging cyclone that swallowed them both. The mighty spear, Villainous, was lodged deep in Lawrence's chest, piercing through his heart and vital organs before emerging from his back. Gripping the spear, Ragna stared into the eyes of his father's murderer, his heart ablaze with fury. But Lawrence's blood wasn't red. It was black, oozing across the ground, soaking both of them. Drenched in his own blood, Lawrence licked the foul substance, then grinned madly. So this is what my blood tastes like. Ahahaha. What they? Ragna's eyes widened in horror as Lawrence laughed and trembled with joy, despite the massive spear driven through his chest. His skin and flesh began to shift, turning red and black. His body grew larger by the second, towering over Ragna. Chapter 385. Blood of the Close Ones. 2. A monstrous figure, over 5 meters tall, loomed above him, casting a terrifying shadow. The spear was still lodged in his chest, but compared to the sheer size of this giant beast, now with a single eye and 4 muscular arms, it looked insignificant. Ah, so I've tasted my blood. Lawrence's voice had changed, no longer the voice of a lean, mad youth. It had become deep, grating, monstrous. As he opened his enormous mouth, Ragna froze, paralyzed by the unknown. I wonder how your blood will taste. Ah ha 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 ha. Before him, that gaping maw opened wide, a portal into a personal hell pulled from Ragna's darkest nightmares. Elsewhere, the Ultra's warriors retreated even farther. And it became clear why they had left such a wide gap between themselves and Lawrence. The Empyrean of Murgo. Lawrence was a beast no one could ever predict. The only one who had ever managed to keep him under control was Murgo himself. That's why getting too close to him was never a good idea. At times, simply on a whim, he wouldn't spare friend or foe alike. He would transform into a grotesque monster, shrouded in a cursed, blood-drenched aura, mouth wide open before his prey. Ragna tried to act immediately, but froze when he found himself unable to pull his spear out of Lawrence's body, no matter how hard he tried. The flesh and blood of that monster had hardened, turning into something akin to reinforced steel. Now disarmed, Ragna was completely isolated, left helpless before the beast. Mere moments later, the Ultra's army heard the sound of Lawrence's bite, crushing down on Ragna's lower half. Ragna didn't even move. Lifted high into the air, he was devoured from the waist down. His legs and entrails torn apart and ground between jagged fangs. After finally tasting the blood he so desperately craved, Lawrence spat Ragna aside, his mangled body tumbling across the dead soil of the Ultrashan plains. Delicious! So delicious! Delicious! Ah ha 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 ha! Laughing like a monster, Lawrence cackled, his blood-stained mouth dripping with fresh crimson. As for Ragna, he simply lay there, staring up at the sky, aimless and empty. He didn't dare look down. He already knew what he would see. You were right, Danzo. Collapsed on the ground, his intestines scattered, his organs mangled. Ragna Claude met a fate darker than the one that claimed the father he had come to avenge. Ragna Claude versus Lawrence. Another battle ended. And the Ultra's army continued to march, trailing behind Lawrence, whose monstrous form was slowly crumbling, reverting back to the emaciated young man he once was. He looked euphoric, intoxicated, like someone who had just spent the night with the woman of his dreams. In that state, approaching him was dangerous. That's why the army deliberately stayed at least 100 meters behind. Their next destination. The remaining elite students, each fighting their own desperate battle. Now this is interesting. Somewhere in the Western Zone. Selena and Aegon Valyrian appeared inside a battlefield prepared specifically for them, wearing his ever-present smile. One that never wavered, no matter the situation. Aegon let out a small chuckle, analyzing their predicament as Selena stood beside him, her expression dark and clouded. They placed their trap right at the gateway meant to send us home, knowing full well it was our only exit. A trap formed of a magical circle that scattered us randomly, splitting us apart to make the hunt easier. He walked slowly, hands behind his back, and Selena followed, a note of unease in her stride. If this really is a trap, then we're in serious trouble. Oh, it's definitely a trap, Aegon replied calmly, glancing around. The place they had been sent to was a desolate city, completely cut off from the rest of the Ultrashan lands. And if they went to the trouble of isolating us like this, I assume our executioner is already here, waiting for us. After walking for some time through the empty city, Aegon came to a halt, and so did Selena. What is it? She asked. She readied every trick and spell she had, bracing herself for anything. Aegon's eyes were locked on a massive building topped with an old, rusted clock. And there, atop that building, stood the one meant for them. There you are, Aegon said with a smirk. The executioner they prepared just for us. Selena's despair deepened tenfold. How could it not, when the one standing there radiated an SS-class aura? Wearing a black cloak that resembled the plague doctors of old, wielding a massive scythe, and exuding a murderous intent so raw it made Selena tremble involuntarily. It was the hollow Ludwig, the same cursed creature that had appeared in Yharnam just 1 year ago, where he single-handedly fought the Empire's finest. Just as they spotted him. He spotted them. So that's Ludwig the Hollow, huh? Impressive. The Ultras actually managed to tame him? Is this really the time for your damn commentary? He's SS class. Selena immediately deployed a magical barrier around herself and Aegon. We have to get out of here, right now. Activating her spell, Selena attempted to teleport them as far away as possible. Even if it was random. It was better than standing face-to-face with Ludwig the Hollow. BZZZT. Selena was just about to activate her magic, when a focused electric jolt struck her from behind, knocking her out cold. She collapsed unconscious, and Aegon let out a sigh as lightning danced lazily between his fingers. Why are most girls around me this annoying? Look how perfect you are when you're quiet. After attacking his only ally, Aegon turned his gaze back to Ludwig, who had just leapt down, now standing face-to-face with him. The Hollow began walking toward him slowly, dragging his massive scythe behind him. The screech of metal scraping against the ground, the crushing weight of his overwhelming aura, all of it pressed down on Aegon, who didn't budge an inch. So, they've sent someone of your caliber against me. I suppose this is their way of trying to force my hand. Make me play a few of my cards, huh? Aegon exhaled in annoyance before walking forward to meet Ludwig himself. Very well. You'll get what you asked for. As both of them advanced toward one another. Aegon slipped his hands into his pockets, and a crooked grin spread across his face while his expression turned darker. They say you were raised among nightmare beasts, Ludwig, that you're no different from them now. Which means you probably can't even understand a word I'm saying. Keek. His golden eyes gleamed as the air around them thickened and warped, causing Ludwig to stop in his tracks without warning. Nightmare creatures are no different from wild animals. They fight using instinct and limited intelligence. But what they do have is a strong sixth sense, a survival instinct sharp enough to feel danger of every kind. With his hands still in his pockets and an air of superiority, Aegon asked his foe in a low, commanding voice. Tell me, Hollow Ludwig, what do you see when you look at me? The air grew heavier and heavier. Ludwig didn't move a muscle. Do I look like prey you think you can hunt? Answer me. Aegon continued speaking without pause, but the world around him no longer felt the same. Had Selena been conscious, she might have gone insane from the sheer pressure of the killing intent now flooding the air. Even the cursed Ludwig found himself frozen, gazing at this strange, defiant prince. Ludwig, Aegon suddenly shouted, fury in his voice, and Ludwig, without hesitation, stumbled back several steps. Then, without warning, the Hollow retreated, vanishing into the distance. His scythe swung behind his back once more. It all happened right before Aegon's unflinching eyes. He finally let out a tired breath. You'll see nothing from me, you bastards. Not even you, Beatrice. Turning back, Aegon walked toward Selena, who still lay unconscious where she'd fallen. What should I even do with you now? He considered leaving her there, but quickly dismissed the idea. He knew Selena was still a tool that could prove useful later. So, carrying her in his arms, Aegon walked off, as if taking a casual stroll through the royal gardens, not the deadly plains of the Ultras continent. After making a Hollow flee without even lifting a finger in combat, Aegon ended his battle victorious without ever fighting. He too became a free player on the board. Aegon Valyrian va Selena Hemsworth versus Ludwig the Hollow. Another round concluded, its outcome as cryptic as ever. For a rogue prince no one could quite figure out. Chapter 386. Danzo Smasher vs. Gvardiel 1. The glow of the Crimson Gate. It was the first omen of death that most elite students had witnessed. The Red Abyss. A vortex of doom that dragged them away, smothering the fleeting hope they'd grasped, and drowning them in the depths of darkness. Among those elite students, Danzo had activated his armor the instant the flash consumed him. When he regained awareness, he found himself trapped in a massive underground cavern. dimly lit by torches blazing with crimson fire. Flames so intense, they seared into his vision. "So, you're my opponent, huh? You look somewhat strong." Wearing the silver dragon armor, Danzo turned toward the unexpected voice, a venom-laced tone belonging to a terrifying figure. Towering over Danzo, the man stood wrapped in black bandages, his face grotesque and twisted, with glowing red eyes, grinning with poison in his smile. Gvardiel awaited him. Danzo was a true warrior. Sharpened senses, a body honed to near perfection, and strength built through grit, far beyond his natural gift. He wasn't stupid. He sensed the difference between them instantly. Just one look was enough. Gvardiel was a monster. Danzo scanned the cave. Escape was not an option. The chamber was sealed tight, buried hundreds of meters underground. Felt more like a grave. And Gvardiel? He was the executioner. Danzo closed his eyes behind the armor and lowered his head. Even with the armor on, he could clearly visualize his own body. Every scar, every muscle, every single cell. He knew them by heart. The strength he had spent his entire life building. Was this the moment it would be tested? The decisive battle that would define his fate? So many questions. And he was about to find their answers here. Knowing that, Danzo opened his eyes, filled with unshakable resolve. Ready to fight as he always had been. "I see you're already prepared. That's some impressive composure," Gvardiel said with a twisted smile, almost admiring him. Here, far beneath the earth, in a chamber bathed in crimson flame, both men braced themselves. "Let's begin." Danzo spoke with a calm, steady voice. There was no hatred or emotion in his tone. And the same was true for Gvardiel. They were complete strangers. No connection between them. It was pure luck that Beatrice had chosen to pit them against one another. "Come at me." With that gesture and grin, Gvardiel gave the signal, harnessing every last drop of power stored within the silver dragon armor. Danzo shattered the ground beneath his feet as he surged forward. His fist swelled with might, crashing into Gvardiel's chest at blistering speed. The impact thundered across the chamber. In a single strike, Danzo sent his opponent flying, smashing him violently into the cavern wall. Magnificent punch! Half embedded in stone, Gvardiel let out a booming laugh, applauding Danzo. Without hesitation, Danzo rushed in again, slamming his fist into Gvardiel's face and driving him even deeper into the rock. With relentless aggression, Danzo unleashed a storm of punches, each blow landing with pinpoint precision. His fists were like twin cannons firing at full force, raining down a brutal barrage fueled by every ounce of aura he could summon. Boom, boom, boom. Times 10. Rocks shattered. Dust exploded outward as Gvardiel was pounded deeper into the wall with each strike. "Yes, that's it. Keep going. Stronger. Stronger." Though the fight seemed one-sided in Danzo's favor, Gvardiel's laughter and constant praise told a different story. Something was off. Danzo ignored every word. He stayed focused, striking without pause. Until, suddenly, a dark fist appeared in front of his face mid-attack. Too fast to react, Gvardiel's counter landed clean. Despite wearing the silver dragon armor, Danzo felt every muscle in his body scream in agony. It was like getting hit by a freight train at full speed. The sheer force hurled Danzo backward several meters. He barely regained his balance, feet carving deep tracks in the stone. Struggling to remain standing, he looked up and saw Gvardiel step out of the crater in the wall, completely unscathed, as if the battle hadn't even started, as if that devastating assault had been a mere illusion. But the pain in Danzo's body, the destruction around them, told the truth. Gvardiel was still laughing, still smiling. He pointed at Danzo again. Once more. "Try again," Gvardiel roared with exhilaration, craving more from Danzo. Light maneuver. Responding to his challenge, Danzo summoned both light aura and earth aura. weaving them together to form 4 additional arms, each one radiating with brilliant white light. He lunged forward, unleashing his full might. Every punch landed with explosive force, detonating bursts of aura across Gvardiel's body. The clash had turned into a fierce brawl, a contest of brute strength, nothing more. Danzo attacked relentlessly. Gvardiel stood firm, choosing only to defend. No flashy techniques, no grand displays of power, only raw violence, direct and unfiltered. Your movements aren't bad. Gvardiel accepted the flurry of strikes, 6 fists hammering him non-stop, without losing his smile. He was enjoying this. Clearly, you've dedicated a serious portion of your life to training. Despite his massive frame, one might expect Gvardiel to be slower. But that assumption quickly crumbled. Before Danzo realized it, another punch came from the side. A bandaged, monstrous fist crashed into his ribs, sending him staggering. He barely stayed upright. Just a normal punch, yet its impact was immense. None of Danzo's blows had shaken Gvardiel, but Gvardiel's casual strikes had Danzo reeling. Still, Danzo pressed forward. White flames erupted from his fists as he moved faster, struck harder. Each blow carried more desperation, more fury. The force of his aura shook Gvardiel's massive body with each impact, while the cave around them cracked and trembled from the shockwaves. Then, another hit. A lightning-fast punch slammed into Danzo's face. But this time he didn't falter. He pushed forward. Faster. Stronger. Light aura surged from within him, making the silver dragon armor shine ever brighter, as if refusing to be outdone by the monster before him. To reach this level with such limited talent, that's truly impressive. The fact that Gvardiel was still speaking so casually, still praising him in the middle of this violent exchange, made something inside Danzo snap. What do people like you know about struggling without talent? Pouring every ounce of power into his right hand. His fist burned with light as he launched it forward like a missile. Light maneuver. Sky-shattering fist. The strike hit with cataclysmic force, amplified further by the silver dragon armor. The cavern trembled. The ceiling cracked. Dust exploded in all directions. Danzo believed, if nothing else, that this attack would leave a mark. But as the haze cleared, his hope was crushed. Gvardiel was still standing. He had caught the punch with a single hand. Holding Danzo's fist in his grip, Gvardiel let out a booming laugh. "Oh, I know all about people like you." He clenched Danzo's hand and unleashed his true power. A sinister creak echoed from the armor. Cracks began to spider across the once mighty gauntlet. "I've buried plenty of your kind with these very hands." With one hand he crushed the gauntlet. With the other he punched. One blow, and Danzo was sent flying, crashing violently into the stone wall. This punch was unlike the ones before. It left the chest plate of the armor shattered. The gauntlet around Danzo's right hand, completely destroyed. As he struggled to recover, Gvardiel was already in front of him. His body wrapped in dark, swirling aura. "People like you don't survive in a world like this." Danzo crossed his arms in an X as a shield, just before a thunderous punch slammed into him again, driving him deeper into the wall. "We live in a world ruled by strength. Nothing else." Blow after blow. Gvardiel pummeled Danzo, smashing him along with the stone behind him. Pinned down by the sheer force, Danzo clenched his teeth, his body glowing brighter with each strike. "I already know that." With a roar, he hurled himself into Gvardiel, becoming a living projectile, forcing the giant to take a step back. Danzo centered all his strength in his hands, his aura flaring violently. "That's why I've spent my whole life chasing it." But this time, his attack wasn't aimed at Gvardiel. He struck upward, chasing power. One blow, and the cavern ceiling shattered. The roof caved in, debris raining down. Danzo's plan was clear. Bury them both under the rubble, then escape through the chaos. But Gvardiel wouldn't allow it. In less than a heartbeat, his shadow spread outward, engulfing the entire chamber. Dark tendrils spiraled through the collapsing ceiling, and with terrifying ease, they held it all in place. The ceiling didn't fall. The plan failed. Danzo was still trapped, and the monster hadn't even broken a sweat. A clever move, but cleverness won't save you from me. Chapter 387. Danzo Smasher vs. Gvardiel 2. Gvardiel stepped forward, his body cloaked in dark aura. Danzo stood frozen. He was shaken. That power, it was eerily similar to what the princess had shown several times before. But this was far more overwhelming. Danzo unleashed his full strength in response. The body he had honed over a lifetime. A strength painstakingly refined, barrier after barrier, until he carved a name for himself among the best of his generation. He threw everything he had at Gvardiel, but his enemy received it all with an unmoving smile. Gvardiel's body was unnatural, wrapped in black bandages, immune to every attack. Danzo couldn't leave a single scratch, no matter how hard he tried. Gvardiel's laughter echoed, dominating the cavern. Try harder. Boom! Another punch, and the silver dragon armor cracked even further. Fight harder. Boom! Fractures spread violently across Danzo's armor. His vision began to blur from the sheer force of the barrage. Yet still, he didn't fall. He stood his ground. He kept exchanging blows with his opponent, even though none of them left a mark. He fought, with everything he had, with every ounce of will, with every drop of blood. And in the darkest moment of his life, Danzo was betrayed by the one thing he trusted more than anything else. His own body gave out. His strength vanished, and his armor, his last shield, failed him. But worst of all, his talent betrayed him. The very thing that had never been enough, that had always kept him one step below the monsters at the top. Blow after blow rained down. Eventually, the faceplate of his armor shattered, exposing Danzo's face for the first time. Warm blood streamed down from his forehead, blinding his eyes. Everything turned red. The only other color that existed in his vision was the black of Gvardiel's fist, slamming into him again, and again, and again. His consciousness wavered. His legs trembled. He could barely remain standing against the relentless flurry. Among the chaos, among the agony, one sound pierced through everything. Laughter. Gvardiel's laughter. Don't fall. He didn't want Danzo to surrender. He wanted him to suffer, to live a little longer, and break slowly. It had always been a one-sided fight. From beginning to end, fate had shown no mercy. The elite students had been condemned to suffer. Every last one of them. Snow, driven mad in his fight against V. Ghost, struggling to survive against Darkslar. Sansa, battered by Beatrice's puppet. And above all, Danzo, broken piece by piece by the monster named Gvardiel. That suffering, that struggle, it was all reflected in one pair of eyes, watching from afar. Thanks to the third-person perspective, he saw them all. He lived their pain with them, one by one. His body cloaked in a dark aura. Fry Starlight sprinted across the barren desert of the Ultras continent, witnessing the torment of his only friends, one after another. He ran like a madman for what felt like forever, and then he stopped. A lifeless body lay before him. Only the upper half remained. The ground was stained with entrails and blood. The intestines of the dead spilled out onto the dirt. There lay Ragna Cloud, eyes wide open, staring blankly at the darkened sky. Fry said nothing. Silently he knelt, and gently closed the eyes of the friend who had already left this world.
Moments later.
He stood once more, still silent, from beginning to end. But his face, that face, darkened with wrath, spoke volumes. He let the stored power in his body surge. Aura flooded him like a raging storm. Fry dashed forward with all his might, leaving Ragna's body behind, to be swallowed by dust and silence. He ran like a demon, driven by desperation, vision after vision. Bloody, hopeless scenes filled his mind, but his focus, his soul, was fixed on one thing, Danzo. Every cell in Frey's body trembled. Rage for what he saw, fear that he might lose them all before he could act, and regret, burning, bitter regret, that he had been so close. He'd been right there. It had only been a few meters that separated them. Not long ago, he had already encountered him once. Back inside the strait, alongside Clanna. Back then, Frey chose not to strike. He made the decision to retreat. He let Gvardiel slip through his fingers. He made that choice. And now, he might be about to pay the price for it. Everything that had happened so far, it was all part of the witch's game. Faster! Frey ran with everything he had. Faster! He needed to reach them before it was too late. Then, just a few minutes later, he stopped. He stood atop a ridge overlooking a vast, desolate plain. And there, beneath him, marched the Ultra's army, led by the same man who had killed Ragna, Lawrence. Frey had moved with such inhuman speed. He caught up to them in what could only be described as a miracle. Lawrence, with an army of 1,000 men behind him. All of them elite warriors of the highest rank. Chosen fighters of the Ultras. A carefully assembled strike force for this mission. They advanced slowly toward the battlefield where the elite class had just fought. Their goal was simple, to eliminate whoever remained. And the combined aura that radiated from them was something else entirely. They were armed to the teeth. Magical artillery at the ready. Battle-hardened duelists and warriors, many of them at rank S and above. And leading them all, the monster Lawrence. Whoever survived the battle from Frey's class would only find death awaiting them ahead. Fully aware of all this, Frey Starlight gripped his blades. He didn't know where his friends were anymore. He was completely lost. He no longer had Selena's mark to guide him. But he did know where the enemy was. Taking a deep breath, he steadied his wildly pounding heart. He tried to silence the images that kept flashing through his mind, one after another. Then he focused on the army before him, the force that threatened their lives. The elite class. What kind of strength does it take to stand against 1,000 men, 1,000 top-blooded fighters, strong enough to start a war on their own? This was the personal elite of the Ultras, under the sky of Earth. How many people could say they'd stand alone against such a force? You could count them on one hand, and Frey Starlight was about to become one of them. Step by step, he began his approach. I can't let them pass. If they did, his classmates would be slaughtered. Frey could go around them, avoid them entirely, but letting a force like this walk free would bring disaster later, just like he'd let Gvardiel go before. And now paid the price. He realized the same thing would happen again if he let this army pass untouched. So now, there was only one choice left. Slaughter every last one of those sons of bitches. Step by step, he drew closer. Tear them apart. Bury them all. If he wanted to save his friends, he had to cut straight through that army, then go and rescue whoever was left. Frey Starlight understood what he was about to do. 1,000 men. He had never killed that many in his life, and whether he could even do it was a complete unknown. But he would do it anyway. Emptying his mind of everything else, he focused entirely on them. This isn't 1 versus 1,000. Fighting to stay grounded in reason. Frey Starlight made his decision. It's 1 versus 1. Just 1,000 times. And with that suicidal thought, his swords were drawn. The battle had begun. Frey Starlight, alone, charged toward the back of the marching army, ready to face them all, by himself. And as he ran, he prayed, with all his heart, that his friends could hold on a little longer. Chapter 388. 1 versus 1001. Frey Starlight's POV. 1 versus 1000. With every step I took toward them, the same thought echoed in my mind again and again. 1 versus 1,000. My heart was torn between fear and worry. Fear for my friends who were dying somewhere far away, and worry about whether I would be too late to help them. At the same time, doubt crept in. I knew I had to stop these enemies by any means necessary. If I didn't, they would slaughter every last one of my companions. Even if my friends somehow won their battles, they'd be far too exhausted to survive against a force like this. 1 versus 1,000. I approached them from behind, quietly. Unaware of my presence, they marched forward in formation, dragging behind them massive magical cannons, weapons of mass destruction, prepared solely for our annihilation. The only sound echoing through the desolate plain was the synchronized rhythm of their footsteps against the ground. But that wasn't true. The loudest sound was my own heartbeat, pounding like thunder in my chest. Clutching Balerion, the Black Terror, and Dark Sister, the Demon Slayer, I gathered my breath and released a stream of hot air from my lungs. I calmed myself as much as I could. 1 versus 1,000. Can I really do this? I asked myself as I stared at the Dark Sister. I'm sure my father could've. The moment he crossed my mind, I saw his phantom, Abraham Starlight, my father, who soared in a realm of power beyond comprehension. The way he looked at me with those ghostly eyes, I understood what he meant to say. You still have a long way to go. With a crooked smile, I let out a hollow laugh, realizing I was still at the very beginning. But I had to do this. If not me, then who will? With unwavering determination, I summoned all the dark aura swirling inside me. My body tensed, fully primed for battle. Then I marched forward. This isn't 1 versus 1,000. It's 1 versus 1. 1,000 times over. Today, the world would know the name Fry Starlight. The battle was about to begin, an absolute suicide mission. Elsewhere, inside the Empire, Millicent sat cross-legged atop the snowfield, eyes closed. A few moments later, a deep frown formed across her face. What the hell is going through his mind? The others around her instantly noticed her reaction. After all, she was the only one who could observe what was happening in that distant land. What's wrong? Sir Alone, sitting before her and gathering his aura in preparation, asked calmly. Millicent hesitated for a second before answering. She had been tracking Fry Starlight's movements on the map this whole time, and now she realized something troubling. Fry Starlight is about to collide with the enemy. Her tone grew serious as she added the part that made her most uneasy. But there are far too many of them. So many that I can't even count. At the very least, they number in the hundreds. The atmosphere immediately shifted. None of them could fathom what that young man was thinking. The Ultra's army, composed of elite blood warriors, was marching with perfect discipline. Adorned in black armor engraved with red markings and carrying deadly weapons that spoke of their readiness for war. They belonged to Lord Murgo's army, stationed in the southern Nokron region. Step by step, they advanced, targeting the lives of the elite class. At the rear of the formation, one soldier moved steadily, neither tired nor weary. He was lost in thought. How would this mission end? When would he return home? What were the higher-ups truly planning with this war that had now fully ignited? Being one of the elites, he had found himself dragged into some of the most important events of all. Soldiers like him often died early in brutal wars. But he wasn't worried, not really. He was positioned at the rear, far from the real danger. If the enemy wanted to reach him, they'd have to kill all 1,000 soldiers ahead of him first. That was why he felt perfectly safe. I wonder when this will all be over. From beneath his dark helmet, he gazed up at the sky with a blank expression. And when he finally looked down, he was startled to see someone standing behind him. But he was the last man in the formation. That shouldn't have been possible. As he focused, he saw a young man, barely 18, with white hair and dark, shadowed eyes. Clutching two dark swords, the soldier instantly realized the young man standing before him wasn't an ally. His hand darted to his weapon, instinctively trying to draw it, but he barely touched the hilt before he collapsed. Huh? Did I lose already? The thought barely formed before he noticed. His body was still standing, but headless. It was only then that he understood. He was already dead. 1. With a single strike, Fry Starlight claimed his first kill. His ambush sent a ripple through the nearby troops, and within seconds, dozens of swords were drawn as they rushed at him from every direction. With blinding speed, Frey's hands moved like the brushstrokes of a mad painter, and the battlefield, Ultra's territory, became his canvas. But this artist had only one color to use: red. With a single slash, he cleaved 2 more soldiers in half, advancing forward. 3. The oppressive pressure of his aura began to alert the rest of the army. Now they knew. Fry parried the oncoming blades with surgical precision. Every swing of his swords brought another man down. 4. 5. And just as the realization struck, a war horn roared across the battlefield like a demonic scream, freezing the entire army in place. But Fry didn't hear it. His focus was absolute. His senses had drowned out everything irrelevant. In his world, there was no horn, no sky, no earth, only the enemy. Surrounded from all sides, a tide of soldiers crashed toward him, conjuring elemental attacks and striking with deadly coordination. Fry cut through them like a storm. His slashes were wild, decapitating some, splitting others straight down the middle, carving torsos apart without pause. The warmth of their blood soaked his hands. The stench of iron filled his lungs. There was no turning back now. Enemy! There's an intruder at the rear. Reform ranks. It's just one man. Take him down. Panic spread through the formation. Meanwhile, from the front lines, the elite warriors of the Ultras snarled in annoyance. What's all this noise? Are they struggling with a single brat? The voice came from one of the Ultras' SS-ranked elites. He frowned at the growing chaos, worried Empyrean Lawrence. Marching ahead without a care, might grow irritated. None of them realized catastrophe had already begun. Fry Starlight's POV. There are things you only feel once you throw yourself into the heart of battle. Emotions you'll never know, until the blood starts to fly. The adrenaline that dragged my body forward. The filth of enemy blood clinging to my skin. The fatigue burning through my arms with every swing. Huff! I exhaled violently, hot steam erupting from my lungs. I was moving like a madman, tearing through the battlefield with reckless abandon. Celestial projectiles constantly formed above, pelting me with every kind of long-range magic. On the ground, swordsmen and spearmen chased me relentlessly. Slash! With every swing, I sent another man straight to hell. I have to kill them all in one strike. If I didn't, and one survived for a second blow, I'd be swarmed and slaughtered on the spot. Slash! Blood splattered. Flesh flew. I can't let them surround me. I kept running, swinging, dodging, slashing, sending wave after wave of dark blades toward my enemies. By now, I'd killed more than I could count, dodging explosions and flames, evading spears and blades, butchering them one by one. Minutes passed, and before I knew it, I was covered in blood and grime, from my white hair to the soles of my feet. The twisted irony? None of it was mine. It was all theirs. Chapter 389. 1 versus 1002. A searing heat flared in my chest, like fire devouring my insides. I gasped, my mouth wide open, drawing in desperate gulps of air, only to exhale them as scalding steam, mixing with the blood mist around me. Hoof! How many had I killed already? Slash! Faster! I cut them down one after another. Their mouths moved, but I couldn't hear a thing. Maybe they were screaming, a final cry before they left this world. Faster! I left only the afterimages behind me, moving at the absolute limit of what this body could achieve. I was struck dozens of times, but blocked them all. It felt like I could see the future. Dodging was effortless. Their combat styles, their movements, It was as if I had seen them all before. My body shimmered with a black glow, shadow-like in nature. My movements were incomprehensible. Too fast, too precise, too powerful. One strike, certain death. The Ultras no longer felt they were fighting a mere boy of 18, but a martial artist who had trained for centuries. A demon forged through countless wars. But that couldn't have been further from the truth. Shadow adaptation. March 7th. /right. Evade left. Leap. Turn. Dodge forward. Faster. Stronger. It was as if some phantom was guiding me across the battlefield. My mind had reached an unnatural state of focus, completely detached from reality. Faster. How much time had passed? Faster. How many had I killed? I didn't know. But whenever I paused for a second and looked behind me, I saw the nightmare I had carved with my own hands. Severed heads, spilled entrails, shattered chests and limbs scattered across the dirt. A lake of crimson blood pooling beneath their corpses. I've killed so many. And when I turned forward again, they were still coming. An endless swarm of Ultras pouring in from every direction, flooding my vision. And there's still more. I inhaled sharply, then surged forward again. My eyes darted in all directions. Hawk eyes swept across the battlefield, scanning every enemy with deadly clarity. Oof! Exhaling more of that searing, bloody steam, I continued the slaughter. Don't stop! I had to move faster. Those visions still danced in front of me, my comrades fighting for their lives. Faster! At some point, the whites of my eyes turned blood red, and reality slipped from my grasp completely. I knew I had reached the strong ones, because I could no longer kill them in a single strike. Now I was surrounded by S-class warriors, battle-hardened elites who struck with deafening force. My body boiled. My armor, heavy and suffocating, was the first to go. I tore it off and tossed it aside. My face was drenched in blood. I tried to wipe it with my elbow, only to find that it, too, was soaked. Above, black crows descended, feasting happily on the corpses I had left them. Their cause, the stench of blood, and the blistering heat of war, they blended into one. The battlefield was now a pit of death. Corpses piled high, blood forming rivers beneath my feet. My enemies were growing stronger with every second. Shadow adaptation allowed me to block most of their attacks, but the faster ones began landing hits now and then. Yet I felt nothing. My eyes were fixed on only one thing. Them. Kill them. Faster. Kill them all. I heard a scream. At first, I thought it came from them. But even after slicing their throats, the scream didn't stop. Only when I looked closer did I realize it was me. A war cry. A desperate howl. A thirst for blood I had never known before. Blood flooded the ground beneath me. Trading blows at blistering speed with their strongest fighters, I came to a terrifying realization. This wasn't even close to the end. They were still coming. Every second, more and more Ultras charged toward me. This was what it meant to fight 1 versus 1,000. I kept running like a madman. My body was breaking down. I was exhausted, but I never stopped. In that place, I chased his phantom. The phantom of my father, who had already torn through the Ultras' army with a speed far beyond mine, and a strength far greater than I could ever match. Trying to keep up with his shadow, I saw him glance back at me now and then. You still have a long way to go. A long, long way. With a bloody smile and a body on the verge of bursting, I kept moving forward. I know. I knew just how far behind I still was. But I wouldn't stop. I wouldn't fall. No matter what it took, this back would never touch the ground. Hoof! The aura of darkness and shadow flared stronger than ever before, reaping the lives of the Ultras one by one. The mighty army of Nokron found itself in a state unlike anything it had ever experienced. Surround him. Keep attacking. Many of them screamed. He's just one man. He'll wear out eventually. They brought out magical cannons, prepared to fire, but they never got the chance. I was already too close. At this range, weapons of mass destruction were useless. I had killed so many of them. So many. And when I finally stopped again, I found my body in a wretched state. Dozens of cuts, burns, bruises, every kind of wound imaginable. Bathed in red, my blood mixed with theirs, each passing second worsening the burning sensation in my flesh. But I paid my injuries no mind. This body would heal. It always had. And it always would. Come at me. All of you. It was absolute madness. The speed at which I tore through them made no sense at all. What swept over them wasn't a boy. It was a whirlwind of blades. An overwhelming force. A monstrous power. That's when the Ultras realized. They were fighting a real monster. Somewhere else in the world, with wide, disbelieving eyes, Millicent stared blankly into the distance, trying to deny what her senses were showing her. He killed. All of them? Alone? These weren't weaklings. They were the high-bloods, the elite of the elite, soldiers one could rely on in any war. But their enemy was simply too strong. The mages were rendered useless the moment the anti-magic activated. The wave controllers couldn't even touch me due to my speed. The duelists and melee fighters, all of them were shredded by shadow adaptation, which allowed me to deflect everything thrown my way. No matter what they tried, no matter how desperately they fought, my blade would cut them all down. Monster! One of them shouted. He's a monster! A true monster unleashed upon them by fate. Then, in just a few seconds, a massive shadow loomed over the battlefield. And when that colossal fist slammed into me, sending me crashing away with immense force, everyone realized the other monster had arrived. Lawrence. Ah ha 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 ha. Another one. More of the elite class. A stronger warrior. Towering at over 6 meters tall, with a destructive aura reaching SS rank. Lawrence stood like a giant among his troops. That single bloodshot eye of his locked onto me, gleaming with a monstrous thirst for blood. But he didn't realize. He was staring at nothing more than the afterimage I had left behind. Because in less than a heartbeat, I was already standing before him. Chapter 390. 1 versus 1003. 10,000 steps of shadow mirage. In the blink of an eye, 1,000 shadow clones struck him down. Their blades tore through his flesh with terrifying ease. The same flesh Ragna had failed to even scratch. Lawrence let out a monstrous howl, but his body regenerated at a terrifying pace, morphing into something even more grotesque and hideous. Spewing dozens of red tendrils, the ghoul lashed out wildly, destroying the battlefield, uncaring of friend or foe. Those tendrils were unbelievably fast and devastating. Everything they touched was reduced to nothing more than bloody pulp. And yet, I found myself charging toward him once again. Wielding both of my swords, I tore through those filthy tendrils at lightning speed, his black blood splattering and mixing with the red of his own soldiers. I kept cutting. Again and again. Lawrence kept screaming. Each time his body changed, twisting into new, horrifying shapes. He turned into a grotesque form covered in dozens of mouths. Then the ghoul tried to devour me, and this time he succeeded. His many maws clamped shut around me, unleashing a terrifying crunch that echoed across the battlefield. Slash! In less than a second, dozens of violet arcs exploded from within those gaping maws, ripping them into countless shreds. With bloodshot eyes, I lunged at the ghoul once more, cutting him into ribbons again and again. Black blood poured from Lawrence's body, but each time he regenerated, adopting a new form to clash with me once more. That monstrous smile of his never wavered. He kept howling. Dozens of fists and massive mouths formed around him as the ghoul attacked from every direction. Lawrence wasn't ordinary. He was one of the hybrid demons with the highest purity among them. Unlike others like Gvardiel or Murgo, who were half demon, half human, Lawrence was more like 80% demon and only 20% man. That made him a true monster, a deadly threat with near-instantaneous regeneration. A difficult opponent, no doubt, but that didn't matter to me. His attacks left me with countless wounds, and that only made him grin wider, tasting my blood with delight. "Are you happy just because you managed to wound me?" I asked coldly, murderous intent pouring from my voice as I resumed slicing him apart. "You're not the only one who can regenerate." For a moment, my body was drenched in blood. Wounded and broken, every breath weighing me down. But the next second, those grotesque wounds began to heal on their own. I increased my assault speed several times over, trying to turn him into nothing but minced flesh. Shadow Adaptation 3-7. Phase 1. Adapt to the enemy's style and counterattack regardless of the situation. Phase 2. Extreme Regeneration. Perfect cellular reconstruction using the user's aura to rebuild the body again and again. Phase 3. I think I'm finally starting to understand this ability. With a bloody smile, I fought like a madman, caring little for what might happen to me. Let's see who's faster. Slash! I fired arc after arc of dark energy like a lunatic, tearing the ghoul's body apart without pause, forcing his black blood to spill endlessly. My blades, or that ridiculous regeneration of yours. Both Lawrence and I screamed as we launched ourselves at one another again. A roaring monster over 6 meters tall, versus one man, who carved through his flesh without end. The earth shook beneath us as his giant mouths kept trying to devour me. And each time I cut him, Lawrence grew even larger. With a thunderous roar that shook the sky, the ghoul hurled me away with all his might, uncaring for the soldiers caught in his rampage. Still, I kept leaping, dodging, slashing, dark aura bursting non-stop from my blade. Again and again, I tore into that nearly immortal body of his with overwhelming speed and unrelenting power. After attacking me from all sides with his monstrous mouths and giant tendrils, Lawrence realized he was at a serious disadvantage. That's when he bellowed with all the rage he could muster. "Attack him! All of you!" He commanded the last of his remaining soldiers. They were all powerful captains, ones who had fled earlier, too afraid of getting caught in the ghoul's slaughter. But now, he was summoning them back. "But, sir..." Some hesitated, but Lawrence let out a louder roar as he kept attacking. "Kill him now, or I'll kill you myself." His bloodthirsty killing intent fell upon them like a curse. And in the next moment, the last of the Ultras charged, rushing into the battlefield now covered in gaping maws and slicing tendrils. Their swords burned with aura as they closed in, surrounding me alongside the tendrils. All of them were ranked above S, making it nearly impossible to hold them off while still dealing with Lawrence. Boom! 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 Times 10. I found myself fending off all of them at once, countering with a storm of blades. But then, one of Lawrence's tendrils slipped right through his own soldiers, killing them in the process, and tore into the right side of my body without warning. He kept attacking, completely indifferent to his troops, using them as disposable meat shields to distract me. As they screamed in horror, faces twisted by fear, I was assaulted from every direction. I managed to block many attacks, but far too many made it through. Blood gushed from every wound, my organs nearly spilling out. The damage was catastrophic. Deep, devastating wounds. Their swords pierced my flesh, and through them, Lawrence attacked as well. I felt my body begin to fall, slowly tipping backward, until I collapsed toward the ground. But just before my back could hit the blood-stained, filthy ground, I somehow caught myself. Mere centimeters from the earth soaked in gore and filth, I forced my body to stop. Eyes bloodshot, body torn open by blades and tendrils that had pierced me endlessly. I pushed forward, dragging myself upright once more. I won't fall. I won't lose. I won't fall. I won't allow it. Not while those images flash before my eyes. The image of Danzo bleeding just as much, if not more, somewhere far from here. I won't fall. With a defiant scream, I spread both my blades wide, forcing them all back as violet lines surged across my torn body. In less than a second, darkness swallowed the world, and in the next moment, a torrent of violet aura erupted, engulfing the entire battlefield in an explosion that incinerated both the Ultras and Lawrence behind them. The massive pillar of aura soared skyward, shaking the ground and obliterating the last remnants of the Ultras, tearing away a large chunk of Lawrence's body, forcing a monstrous scream from his throat as he leapt away from the blast. But before he could land, I crashed into him like a falling meteor. "You're not going anywhere!" With both swords in hand, I swung at full force, ripping through his filthy flesh again and again. My screams mixed with his agonized roars. He tried to strike with his tendrils, but I severed them all, him along with them. Standing atop his broken body, I kept slashing, kept tearing him apart, faster, harder. My strikes far outpaced his vaunted regeneration. And then, within less than a minute, the ghoul's monstrous body finally burst apart, revealing the scrawny young man squirming at my feet. I stood over a pool of red and black blood, my body ruined, my breath ragged. I stared down at Lawrence, now screaming in fear, muttering incoherent words between broken sobs. His arms, gone. His legs, gone. The ghoul couldn't regenerate anymore. Aya, yaya, yaya. The filthy demon wailed, a shriek that pierced my skull. So without hesitation, I severed his head with a single slash, letting his final blood soak the cursed soil. That's it. Hoof. The end. I staggered, barely able to stand. Leaning on my swords, I dragged myself through the field of corpses and rivers of blood, away from the pit of hellfire and ruin. I walked on, my body broken, my soul drained. I have to reach them. I had to move faster. I have to get to him. Danzo. I have to help him. I could barely see ahead. Staggering, exhausted, shattered. I did it. I'd made it. I killed 1,000 men. I did it. I really did it. Trying to steady myself, that fleeting feeling of salvation didn't last long. Because the moment I killed 1,000 men, I slammed headfirst into the next wall. I stopped in my tracks, my face worn, my eyes disbelieving. I stared at the old man standing in front of me, tattered robes, a single blade, an old man who stared at me just as disbelieving. "What are you?" he asked, his hand resting atop the hilt of his sword. "This life, this fate." No sooner had I survived my brutal war than they threw me without mercy into the next one. Before Murgo, Lord of the Dark Hive, an Ultra's Lord standing between me and the ones I had to reach. This life kept cornering me from every side, even to the very end. Chapter 391. Fry Starlight vs. Murgo 1. Life was never fair. No matter how hard you tried, no matter how much you sacrificed to reach something, in the end, you'd crash against the painful truth, realizing your failure. Even after defeating an army of over 1,000 Ultras, with the ogre Lawrence at their head, Fry now found himself standing before a monster far more terrifying. Murgo, the Lord of the Ultras, said to be the strongest among them. Here, atop a blood-soaked battlefield, surrounded by scattered corpses, bodies that had become nothing more than a feast for the crows, the two stood face to face over a crimson pool, tainted with black. Fry Starlight versus Murgo. The Lord of the Ultras had just asked him a question. "Who are you? Who is this young man who annihilated such overwhelming numbers alone? What is the secret of the victorious hero, the one who climbed from the bottom to reach what no one else had?" Those questions haunted Murgo as he tried to assess the boy standing before him. But Fry didn't respond. He couldn't bring himself to. His feet, sunken in the pool of blood, made it feel like he stood in a swamp. Even walking felt like dragging a mountain. His armor had been discarded long ago, leaving his upper body bare, soaked in blood. There was no part of him left unscathed. Just standing was a challenge. His blood-soaked eyes could barely see anymore. His swords, once an extension of his body, felt heavy now. Each step drained what little strength he had left. And now, he was facing one of the strongest lords of the Ultras. The smell of blood, the exhaustion, the dead. Fry felt it all. He wanted nothing more than to lie down and close those heavy eyes. But he couldn't. Not when those scenes kept flashing in his mind. He saw Danzo, his friend, bleeding as much, perhaps even more, in some far-off place. He saw Gvardiel tearing through his friend's body, laughing madly. That horrific laughter echoed in Frey's mind like a curse. "I have to go," he muttered, forcing himself to move forward. "Go? Go where?" "To them. I have to reach them." "Ah, I see. You're talking about your comrades," Murgo replied. He scratched his head, his gaze fixed on Fry from the start, trying to decipher the nature of the young man who had caused such a massacre. With a half-smile, Murgo said something that struck more fear into Fry than anything else. "Sorry, but you're not going anywhere." Murgo began walking toward him, stepping over the sea of corpses. "You're far too dangerous, boy. The mere thought of letting a monster like you go free, letting you grow stronger, it terrifies me." He laughed, unsheathing his Ushigatana. "I'm too old for surprises. My bones can't take it anymore." And just like that, the Lord of the Ultras made it clear he would not let Fry pass. But before he could even blink, Fry charged at him, enveloped in blazing purple aura. His swords burned with fury. How could he still move like this, even in that state? Murgo briefly wondered. Frey's blades were aimed directly at his neck. But the old lord still wore that same calm smile. "Well, it doesn't matter." In the blink of an eye, a strange wave of aura exploded, spreading in all directions. Fry had been a heartbeat away from slicing Murgo's neck. But in the very next moment, the old man was already behind him. Even if you were in perfect condition, the outcome wouldn't have changed. At that instant, blood exploded from Frey's arm. His right hand, along with the Dark Sister, had been severed. Murgo was too fast. So fast, Fry hadn't even seen or felt the strike until his hand was gone. The old lord had intended to end it quickly. But what he didn't expect was Fry grabbing his severed hand before it hit the ground and forcing it back into place. In less than a second, an impossible scene unfolded. Flesh fused with flesh, and a violet light surged from the wound, reattaching the limb as if it had never been lost. And as soon as it was restored, black flames ignited from Frey's swords. A roaring storm of aura erupted from his blades, surging toward Murgo. The latter blocked it easily. But his expression shifted to seriousness. That bloody monster had come at him again, relentless. His severed hand had returned, as if nothing had ever happened. "Interesting," Murgo muttered. Their blades clashed, Frey's twin swords against the Ushigatana. Murgo fought without any difficulty, blocking every strike, exchanging rapid blows. Legendary blades rang out, steel against steel in a violent rhythm, between Fry, who attacked like a madman, and Murgo, who parried everything with terrifying ease. "Why do you fight with such ferocity, boy?" Boom! Both moved at blinding speed. Murgo kept retreating, while Fry chased after him with relentless fury, trying to land a strike. But no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't touch him. "Trying to save your friends, is that it?" Boom! Their swords clashed again and again, the battlefield echoing with the sound of metal. Fry panted heavily, his breath ragged, his mind unable to focus anymore. Against Murgo, that strange old man who spoke so casually despite the savage exchange taking place between them. "You seem to have a noble ambition," Murgo said calmly. "What kind of will drives a man to stand alone against 1,000, just for the sake of others?" Boom! Sparks of fire burst from the grinding steel. Dark Sister and Balerion surged with Frey's power. But every time, the Ushigatana was there to meet them, Their hands became weapons of mass destruction, carving through the air, leaving trails of clashing aura behind them. Boom! Again and again they collided, each trying to overpower the other. Face to face, an old man smiling, and a blood-soaked youth who looked more monster than man. "You intend to push through no matter the cost, don't you?" Murgo said. "You believe that if you give everything, absolutely everything, you might succeed." Still smiling, Murgo slowly opened his dark eyes, revealing a terrifying glow beneath. "How naive you are, Fry Starlight." Slash! From out of nowhere, Murgo unleashed dozens of slashes, ripping into Frey's skin and exploding blood in every direction. But he didn't stop. He continued the merciless onslaught. "Do you see yourself as some kind of hero, Fry Starlight?" With one mighty strike, Murgo sent Fry flying, then blinked behind him in an instant and tore through him again. "You're wrong, boy. You're nothing but a monster." Slash! "A monster like me." Slash! Drenched in his own blood, Fry was completely overpowered. "Tell me, how can a monster who slaughtered 1,000 people so easily even think about saving others?" The corpses were still scattered around them, rotting, desecrated, consumed by crows and decay. "You think we're just animals, don't you? Creatures waiting to be butchered by your sword, Fry Starlight." With brutal speed, Murgo struck Fry down to the ground and stomped on his chest with crushing force. Lying beneath his boot, Frey's body was torn apart, deep wounds carved into him from head to toe. He glared up with bloodshot eyes, as Murgo leaned in, pressing down harder. "Just like you have something to fight for." Each one of them did too. The corpses littering the field weren't savage ultras. They were soldiers of the high blood, men who had lived with honor and kindness. "You think you have the right to judge them? To kill them so you can save your friends? Absurd." Murgo ground his heel harder into Frey's chest. "Look at them, Fry Starlight. You killed them. You killed them all." His voice boomed with rage as he pressed down. "Each of them had a story waiting to be told, and you severed their threads before they could even begin. Whether blessed or damned, they died with dreams still clinging to their bones. How many children will grow up without their fathers because of you? How many men striving for success had that very dream ripped from them? Some were basking in the warmth of family, and you ended it. Some were learning to embrace solitude, and you erased their existence. You killed them with your own hands, Fry Starlight. So what kind of selfish arrogance makes you believe you're worthy to even think about saving anyone else?" Murgo grabbed the hilt of his Ushigatana and drove it into Frey's chest. "You and I, we're monsters." He pulled it out, then stabbed him again. "Monsters made to kill. We live to slaughter and spill blood." He continued stabbing him, his expression twisted and terrifying as he looked down on the bloody mess that was Fry. "Our only purpose in this world is destruction, until the day we die and receive our punishment. That is the meaning of our existence. There's no real difference between us." Having torn Fry apart, his blood flooding the ground, Murgo finally stepped back, a sharp look in his eyes. This is the world we live in, Fry Starlight." Chapter 392, Fry Starlight vs. Murgo, 2. He turned away from the boy he had butchered without mercy, exhaling in frustration. "I went too far. I shouldn't have lost control like that." After burying his opponent beneath an avalanche of brutality, Murgo forced himself to move on, his attention shifting to the other corpses around him. He just couldn't comprehend it. A monster who had slaughtered 1,000 men talking about saving anyone? That was what truly made him snap. Now then, where did that beast sever Lawrence's head? Murgo stepped deeper into the sea of blood, one step at a time, searching for his subordinate. That boy possesses the highest purity among us all, and regeneration that rivals even the strongest demons. He'll survive, even if only a fragment of him remains. Lawrence was nothing more than a 15-year-old child, with barely any experience. He was more like a beast that fought purely on instinct. And that instinct, despite his raw power, wasn't enough. Murgo had no intention of letting him die so easily. Unbothered, he kept searching, until suddenly he froze. His eyes widened. Of course they did. After all, he felt him standing behind him. Slowly, Murgo turned around. There stood Fry Starlight, swords in hand, bloodshot eyes cold as death. What is the meaning of this? Murgo was certain he had killed him. He had pierced his heart several times. Yet here he was, standing again. Then, without warning, Fry lunged forward, resuming the battle. Both surged at one another, their speed so fast it resembled teleportation. A flurry of strikes echoed across the blood-stained land. Murgo couldn't understand it. Most of Frey's wounds had already healed. What are you? Fry attacked faster than before, relentlessly trying to land a fatal blow. But Murgo was still far quicker. He bent space around him, teleporting freely, effortlessly avoiding everything, and appeared behind Fry with a smile. Crevice. Slash. In less than a second, more than 100 cutting marks exploded across Frey's body. A brutal technique using the Ushigatana's unique spatial mastery. Blood gushed out violently. Then, the wounds caught fire in a dark violet glow, and healed. Murgo's eyes twitched in disbelief. Fry dashed toward him again, and their chaotic speed duel resumed. Both had become blurs, too fast to follow. Slashing and countering. The battlefield became their canvas of destruction. Murgo continued tearing Fry apart. Sever. Slash. His swordsmanship was nothing short of monstrous. In less than a second, Frey's body was once again covered in hundreds of cuts. But then again, a strange sound, a rustling, a shadow swept through Frey's body. And just like that, those wounds began to heal once more, cloaked in the same dark violet glow. Ha ha ha! Are you some kind of zombie? They clashed again, and again. But then, Murgo noticed something. He's getting faster? With each passing second. Frey's speed increased. Crevice. Murgo unleashed hundreds of slashes in an instant. That was the power of the Ushigatana, a sword that could attack from every direction with invisible cuts in the blink of an eye. It was the same attack that had destroyed Frey's body again and again. But this time, something changed. Just before the slashes could connect, a dark aura erupted from Fry, and he moved, weaving through them with an unnatural precision. Dodging invisible attacks that no one should be able to see. Somehow, Fry avoided the unavoidable. Murgo laughed madly. You can see them, Fry Starlight. His hand moved with blinding speed, unleashing another flurry of attacks. You can see my sword. This time, Murgo went all out, unleashing his full power. With a single swing, he released 100 invisible crescent blades. Then with a second, 200 more. Then a third. Then a fourth. And a fifth. By the 10th swing, thousands of slashes rained down like a storm, covering the entire battlefield. The corpses, the ground, the mountains, even the air itself, everything was torn apart. And especially, Fry Starlight, though he managed to dodge some. His body was shredded, torn to pieces like meat on a butcher's slab. Murgo's invisible blades showed no mercy. Then, less than a second later, that same dark aura ignited again, wrapping around Frey's mangled form and healing him. He stood again. Murgo narrowed his eyes. Again, that strange power. Murgo spoke in confusion, watching the young man whose regeneration now mirrored that of Lawrence. And once again, the battle resumed. Murgo unleashed another barrage of cutting attacks, but Fry began dodging them with increasing efficiency and greater speed. He's seeing my attacks and adapting to them. Every single time. As their clash continued, a realization dawned on Murgo. He's adjusting to them. That strange dark glow, that combat style unlike anything he'd ever seen before. Murgo now understood that his opponent was anything but ordinary. Shadow adaptation, 3-7. Against a monster like Murgo, ranked SS+. The true power of the shadow adaptation was finally beginning to show. A terrifying ability that made Fry resistant to nearly everything his enemies threw at him. And when paired with his uncanny regeneration, it created a force Murgo could no longer dismiss. Fry had become a question mark, an anomaly Murgo had so far handled with ease. Yet now, Frey's speed and strength had grown at such an alarming rate that reaching Murgo was no longer a matter of if, but when. This can't be happening. An 18-year-old boy, wielding two blazing swords imbued with strange powers, looked more terrifying than the demons Murgo had once faced. It defied reason. Fry had shattered every limit, far surpassing what should be possible. Their blades continued clashing amid a battlefield consumed by flames. The devastation from their collisions scarred the very land. Then their eyes met. And in that moment, Murgo saw something he had failed to notice before. Fry Starlight's eyes. His body's movements, his aura, his abilities. He was too perfect. A cold, expressionless face. Eyes devoid of light. Not a word spoken since the fight began. He didn't seem like a boy fighting for his friends anymore. He seemed like a killing machine. An automaton. Not the same human who had once fought with conviction and emotion. But something else entirely. Their auras exploded again as they pushed against each other, and Murgo laughed out loud. You? What are you? Was he still fighting Fry Starlight? Or had that cold sword become something entirely different? Fry didn't answer. He just kept fighting harder than before, regenerating again and again, that dark violet light overtaking his face. His silence was louder than words. Murgo had been right all along. That boy wasn't human anymore. He was a monster, a true monster who had finally found his way to this battlefield. After all, it was impossible for someone who had just fought 1,000 men to then fight like this with such power, such cold fury. What the hell are you? Fry Starlight, Murgo roared, launching himself forward with full strength, unleashing everything he had. The battle erupted into an entirely new realm of destruction. The mangled corpses around them were desecrated even further, collateral damage from a fight between beasts. Murgo versus Fry Starlight, a terrifying clash between a young man and an old warrior, both wielding blades for similar reasons, but standing on opposite sides of a world that had forced them to fight. This was the peak of the elite class's struggle, and a brutal reminder that their suffering was far from over. Chapter 393. The Peak of the Witch's Game. The final round of the Witch's Game had reached its peak. Devastating battles erupted across the land, leaving behind trails of destruction and bloodshed. Blood of both the invading elite class and the native ultras. But among all the chaos, one battle stood above the rest in brutality and power. Fry Starlight versus Murgo. Their battlefield was none other than the sea of corpses Fry had carved through not long ago. A frantic, chaotic clash so fast-paced that it resembled teleportation. Two monsters locked in a death match, each trying to tear the other apart. Somehow, Fry managed to survive. Not only that, he held his ground against one of the strongest warriors the Ultras had to offer. Murgo. But this fight, it was unlike anything that had come before. Frey's powers, his speed, his technique, everything was different. With cold, empty eyes and an emotionless face, the young man had become a living weapon. A machine of death clashing head-on with the mightiest Ultra's lord. In that moment, Fry could no longer understand anything. My body feels so heavy. In the depths of his fading consciousness, Fry felt himself sinking into a thick, black swamp. A sea of darkness slowly consuming his soul. In that place his mind was blank, paralyzed. Unable to move as if drugged into submission. Drunk on fatigue and grief, Fry couldn't remember a thing. Felt like a dream. A nightmare he had been forced to live through until now. And the nightmare wasn't over. Even in that state, the third-person perspective of the system allowed him to glimpse what his friends were enduring. And his eyes, more than anyone, settled on Danzo, his comrade, a fighter who had given more to this life than anyone else. The man who stood by his side without ever expecting anything in return. Someone Fry had called a true friend, now dying slowly, tortured by Gvardiel. I have to keep fighting. Frey's lips moved with effort. His body was shattered, bloodied, exhausted. He had already given everything. Fought with every last drop of strength. There wasn't a single part of him left unscathed. But life was cruel. Murgo was too strong for him to face in such a condition. He had fought and lost. He knew this, but he refused to give in. I have to stand. Again. He didn't want to watch it anymore. Had suffered enough. He didn't want to live while others died right before his eyes. He knew he wouldn't be allowed to die. Those above wouldn't permit it. He was still needed. A crucial piece in a plan far greater than his understanding. And that was the most terrifying part. Unable to die, forced to live on, Fry found himself watching as he slowly lost himself, again and again. The trauma he endured, it was pushing him further and further. Slowly but surely, Fry Starlight was becoming the monster everyone had feared. I don't want this. To live and watch himself transform into a soulless beast, a killing machine born for a purpose he never chose. Fry didn't want that to happen. He tried to rise again, to fight harder, with more power, with more rage, to give everything he had left. To reach them, to save them. He tried to defy fate, to resist its pull with everything he had. But reality was cruel, and slowly, Frey's consciousness drifted into darkness, as if dozens of shadowy threads wrapped around him, binding him in place. He realized he had lost. But the truth was far different from what he believed in those final moments. Even as his mind fell into dreams, his body stood, still fighting, with more rage, more power, more speed, just as he had wanted. That body kept fighting until the very end. For the dream its owner couldn't realize. And Fry never knew that he had already become the monster. Fry Starlight versus Murgo. No doubt this was the hardest battle yet. Each member of the elite class had their own struggles, their own battles to survive ever since they were swallowed by the Red Gate. Scattered and isolated, every one of them found themselves forced to fight for their lives. Among them, a high-speed battle broke out in a remote mountainous region, far from the others. Demon Valyrian, clad in his golden dragon armor, charged forward at blinding speed. Two men pursued him relentlessly, twin brothers, identical in face and form, each wielding a curved blade. They struck again and again with terrifying precision, their swords humming with deadly intent. Demon found himself facing two of the Ultra's elite, both easily A+ rank fighters. Their technique far outclassed his. But his golden dragon armor amplified his physical abilities to the point of becoming a one-man force of destruction. Even so, the coordination between the twins was unnerving. Demon could barely hold them off. Resistance is pointless, boy. One of them sneered. You can't take both of us at once. With blades cloaked in slicing wind auras, the twins shredded everything around them, trying to corner Demon. But surrounded from both sides, Demon held his ground. Black lightning surged through his fists as he parried with his bare hands. Their attacks rained down with such speed that the armor began to crack and scar. Yet Demon remained calm. You're only strong when you're together. With a roar and a flash of rage, Demon slammed the ground beneath him. Let's see what happens when I tear you apart. Lightning formation. Wrath of the Lion. A massive lion made of dark lightning erupted from his aura. Its roar shattered the air, the explosion launching the twins in opposite directions. In that moment, Demon flashed toward one of them. The twin tried to react. But Demon was faster, much faster. Twin Dragon Gate, a furious dragon head in one hand, a mocking one in the other, both constructed of seething black lightning. They clamped down on the twin with brutal force, detonating upon impact. The man screamed, confident he could withstand the attack. But Demon's dragons tore through his body like wet paper, shattering his dual swords. Even with the resilience of an A+ rank fighter, he did this to me with one strike. Staggered and bleeding, the man stared in disbelief at the golden warrior approaching with a crackling fist. Did you think being A+ rank made you untouchable? Demon's punch drove through his chest like a bolt of divine punishment. His heart burst open, blood pouring from his mouth as he collapsed. You're nothing but worthless trash. With one blow, Demon killed him.
No.
The second twin lunged in a frenzy, fury blazing in his eyes after seeing his brother fall. But Demon didn't flinch. He met him head-on with more black lightning surging through his body. Are you angry because your little brother died at my hands? Boom! Their exchange wasn't even close. Demon's fists overwhelmed his opponent. He's exactly where he belongs. Breaking both of his swords, Demon pummeled the twin into the ground with fists of thunder. A living punching bag, the man could only scream and cough blood under the relentless onslaught. The only place fit for ultras is hell. Demon spat as he battered him senseless. Filth like you shouldn't walk this earth. You belong buried beneath it. You're nothing but filthy beasts. Mistakes that should have never been born. The only fate you deserve is death by these hands. He gathered power into his right fist, then unleashed a rocket punch that exploded the man's skull into a mess of flesh and blood. Blood splattered across Demon's face, and the corpse dropped limp at his feet. He spat on it in disgust. So this is what those bastards were planning. Luring them into a trap, killing them off one by one. But they made one fatal mistake. They underestimated Demon. He rolled up his left sleeve, revealing Selena's sigil glowing faintly on his arm. Time to find the others. The moment he activated it, Demon felt the presence of many of his companions nearby, targeting the closest one without hesitation. Demon Valerian charged forward in a surge of dark aura, ready to keep fighting, to spill the blood of the scum who dared drag him into such a trap. He had already claimed victory in his battle, and with it earned the right to become a free player. Chapter 394, The Last Survivor. Many forces decide the fate of mankind in this world. Among them, power is the most obvious. For the strong always have the highest chance of survival, no matter where they are. In a ruthless world governed by the law of the jungle, strength alone often separates life from death. But sometimes, other forces intervene from nowhere. One such force, acknowledged by some, denied by others, is luck. Time and time again, the weak survive not through strength, but by sheer chance. Lucky enough to escape the worst outcomes by a hair's breadth. But luck alone is rarely enough. Life always finds ways to corner its prey with the most unexpected misfortunes. And that theory was about to be tested when the Red Gate swallowed the luckiest man alive. Dawn Polaris was flung into a battlefield prepared especially for him. As the wielder of the Last Survivor ability stood up again and scanned his surroundings, he realized he had landed somewhere completely different from before. With crimson eyes, he swept the terrain and spotted the opponent that had been assigned to him. They locked eyes for a moment before Dawn asked, "Who are you?" She was a woman, a girl around his age, clad in a light black armor and elegant leather attire, a pair of black gloves on her hands and a small cap atop her pale head. Her hair was white, her eyes a deeper, more crimson red than even Dawn's. Her face so pale it was as if she might die at any second. With a thin blade in hand, she placed her right hand gently over her chest and bowed with grace. "My name is Maria, Empyrean to a former lord, known as Madame A." Unsheathing her sword, she calmly stepped forward. "I'm sorry, but I have to kill you." Without warning, she vanished, peering right in front of him. Dawn instinctively unsheathed his sword and ignited its edge with fire. And without hesitation, the two began to duel. Their swordplay was masterful. "Empyrean, that's a pretty high rank among the ultras, if I'm not mistaken. Dawn spoke as he attacked with blazing aura, pressuring Maria with skilled and aggressive strikes, which she deflected easily, without using any aura at all. Empyrean are candidates meant to become lords one day. So yes, you could say it's a respectable position. There were only 4 known holders of the Empyrean title. V under Lord Gavid Lindman, Gvardiol under Lord Godfrey, Lawrence under Lord Murgo, and finally, Maria under the late lord killed by Mikar Madame. Realizing that his opponent was an important figure to the enemy, Dawn unleashed a barrage of ruthless attacks, aiming to slash her throat. Their swords clashed with violent force. Dawn pressed harder and harder. Dozens of exchanges passed, but despite all the pressure he exerted, Dawn suddenly realized his body was riddled with injuries. What they? He only understood what was happening when their swords clashed again. Maria was still untouched, not a single scratch on her body. Her sword looked delicate, but it felt heavy as stone against him, and when he looked closely, his expression froze. "You're not using any aura?" "Ah, you noticed." With a flick of her wrist, Maria flung Dawn backward using only physical strength. He slammed into a wall with enough force to feel his bones shift. Maria approached him slowly, her face cold and emotionless. The thin blade in her hand now looked more like a reaper's scythe in Dawn's eyes. What angered him most was the fact that his opponent was simply better than him, skilled beyond measure, physically stronger than he was, and she had defeated him without even using aura. As she stood before him, Dawn tried to leap up again, but froze in place the moment Maria moved her free hand in a strange, flowing motion. The moment she did, a mysterious force bound him in midair. He couldn't move an inch. Raising her arms slowly, Dawn was lifted up alongside them, as if invisible strings were pulling him from within. "You are no match for me." Maria spoke those words with a tone that might have sounded condescending. Yet in a situation like this, her calmness was nothing out of place. There was no contempt in her voice, no arrogance toward her opponent. She was simply stating the truth. Empyrean Maria, a terrifying combatant often ranked alongside the masked V, the Ultra's so-called hero. In fact, V had always been weaker than her, until recently when he formed a contract with one of the strongest demons. With swordsmanship far beyond Dawn's, a physical prowess that betrayed her fragile appearance, and strange abilities he couldn't comprehend, Maria was, without a doubt, one of the most dangerous talents the enemy side possessed. Realizing this, Dawn let out a bitter laugh. "Damn monster!" That insult finally broke through her still expression. Maria narrowed her crimson eyes, the first shift in her gaze since the battle began. "A monster, huh? Is that what I look like to you?" If we were to speak of appearances, that label couldn't be further from the truth. With her elegant armor and noble demeanor, Maria looked more like a refined noblewoman from a bygone era, an image of delicate beauty. But her abilities were anything but beautiful. They were savage, monstrous even. "You're all just beasts wearing human skin." Dawn spat with rage. Even though he couldn't move, his body still frozen by her power. "You filthy creatures are a disgrace to humanity." He recalled the lower blood, savage beasts in human form, and the upper blood, who never ceased to hunt them down like animals. Dawn's hatred toward Maria was unfiltered, his disgust plain on his face. "I see." Maria nodded, expressionless as ever. Yet somehow, her empty gaze seemed almost melancholic. That look ignited even more fury within Dawn's heart. "Just kill me already," he growled. "I don't want to waste another second staring at something so vile." He knew he had lost. He was powerless, and so he no longer cared. Maria slowly lowered him to the ground until he was back in front of her. Standing there, she gently brought her blade to his neck. "As you wish. I'll grant you the death you asked for." She was just about to swing. A swift, clean beheading. No pain.
No cruelty.
But in that very moment, Time itself froze. A violent crash shattered the silence, as a bolt of howling black lightning struck the earth directly above her. Maria leapt back instinctively, blocking the attack at the last second. Dawn dropped to the ground, free once again. "What the hell are you doing, Dawn Polaris?" The voice thundered with fury. Demon Valerian had entered the battlefield, cloaked in dark lightning and clad in the golden dragon armor. "You can't even handle one, you useless bastard?" Charging forward with a roar of thunder, he launched himself straight at Maria, his black lightning-infused fist crashing toward her face. But she deflected it effortlessly. Their attacks collided, neither giving ground. Their strength was perfectly matched. A frail girl, holding her own against a juggernaut wearing divine armor. Realizing this, Demon Valerian's expression turned deadly serious. This was no ordinary opponent. This was Empyrean Maria. Chapter 395. Maria won. After the first clash between them, Demon Valerian and Maria both stepped back, facing each other again. They locked eyes, silently gauging each other's strength. The explosive power radiating from Demon was impossible to miss, especially with the golden dragon armor amplifying it several times over. There was no doubt. He was one of the strongest elite students. Maria could see that clearly, especially through the ominous black lightning coursing through him. She saw it. But Demon didn't. No matter how hard he focused on the pale-skinned girl before him, channeling all his senses to assess her strength, he felt nothing. Absolutely nothing. It was as if she were a normal human. No aura, no pressure, no signs of power. Yet she had blocked him so easily just moments ago. Taking a deep breath, Demon returned to his stance, eyes narrowing. "Let's see what you've really got." He stomped the ground with force, then shot forward in a flash of black lightning. The distance between them vanished in an instant. He hurled a punch at her with everything he had. But just before his fist could connect, Maria tilted her body at an impossible angle, dodging at the last second. Demon didn't stop. He unleashed a flurry of punches, so fast that streaks of dark aura trailed behind him like cracks in the air. Each blow tore the earth apart, but none of them landed. Maria weaved between his strikes with flawless agility, dodging each one by mere hair's breadths. That level of agility, how the hell? After slipping past all his attacks, Maria countered with a razor-fast horizontal slash aimed at Demon's right flank. He blocked it with his armored right hand, but the impact felt like being hit by a speeding truck. Even though he endured it, the raw physical force coming from that fragile-looking body made no sense. Still, Demon wasn't one to fall behind. Clutching her sword with his right hand and locking it in place, he raised his left hand, gathering a monstrous amount of aura, until the snarling head of a dragon formed over his fist. The furious beast opened its maw toward Maria, ready to devour her with a devastating blast. But with her blade restrained, Maria responded with a simple punch from her free hand, straight toward the dragon's face. Unlike Demon's flashy, aura-infused technique, her punch held no aura, just raw, pure strength. Ordinarily, a bare hand should have been obliterated on contact. But it wasn't. The moment their powers collided, a massive shockwave exploded across the battlefield. From afar, Dawn watched in disbelief. That girl's punch had stopped Demon Valerian's full-force attack. There they stood, fist against fist, at the center of a crater of destruction. Neither could overpower the other, but Maria moved first, delivering a sudden downward kick aimed at Demon's face. He narrowly avoided it thanks to his lightning-fast reflexes, but in doing so, he released her sword. In a blink, Maria slashed at him, aiming for his head. Demon, undeterred, twisted and countered with a punch, redirecting the blade so it slammed into the ground beside him instead. They both leapt back, only to charge in again at full speed, determined to end this fight. Maria's strikes were brutal, but Demon endured them all, his black lightning flaring brighter and fiercer with each blow. I could do this all day. With a thunderous roar, Demon unleashed even more lightning aura, gaining a slight edge as Maria was finally forced onto the defensive. Since his defeat in the Victoriad at the hands of Fry Starlight, Demon had come to a painful realization. His biggest weakness was stamina. He couldn't maintain Black Lightning for long, as it rapidly drained his body. But after that fight, the proud lion of House Valyrian trained relentlessly, pushing his endurance to insane levels. With the help of the Golden Dragon armor, he was able to absorb aura more efficiently and drastically extend the time he could sustain Black Lightning. The result? He had become a much stronger warrior than ever before. I don't know what kind of monster you and that weird body of yours are. He pressed harder, while Maria focused solely on defense. But you're not winning this. After a barrage of rapid-fire punches. For just a moment, Demon broke through. A devastating blow smashed into Maria's abdomen, and the Black Lightning detonated inside her body. She was launched backward, rolling violently across the ground until she crashed into a wall, reducing it to rubble. The sheer force behind Demon's punch could have torn through steel. Step by step, clad in the power of the Golden Dragon, Demon walked toward her. The Black Lightning crackling louder and fiercer with every second. He had truly intended to kill her. Maria, on the other hand, was lying on the ground, her black hat covering her face. To any onlooker, she would have seemed utterly defeated. Even Demon himself believed it. His last attack had hit her with full force. Yet, Maria didn't show any sign of distress. She spoke indifferently as she slowly rose to her feet. "Oh, monster!" What a fitting word. Gripping her slender sword, she stared at Demon, her crimson eyes growing deeper in color with every passing second. Monsters are cruel and savage, and they can be incredibly dangerous, so be careful when you're dealing with one. Then, without warning, and under the watchful gazes of both Demon and Dawn, Maria violently drove her blade into the palm of her own right hand. A thin stream of blood began trickling from the wound, dripping onto the sword's edge and spiraling around it in a magical dance. Demon immediately shifted into a serious stance. And how could he not? For the first time since the battle began, he finally felt her aura. I thought she was relying solely on physical strength. He realized now that he was mistaken. The overwhelming surge of aura coming from her made that very clear. Appearances can be deceiving, and the truth far more terrifying than you imagine. With chilling composure, Maria swung her sword, unleashing a massive crimson arc straight at Demon. The attack moved so fast that Demon barely had time to raise his shield. But the moment it struck, a wave of searing pain tore through him, his golden armor denting and cracking on impact. One strike, that was all it took to damage his near-indestructible armor. Demon clenched his jaw. He had clearly underestimated her. Focusing his aura into the armor, the cracks and dents began to mend, a trait of the Golden Dragon armor, modeled after the Emperor's own Fume Knight armor. It possessed partial regeneration abilities, making it a devastating relic of war. Reigniting his aura, Demon launched himself at Maria again. "I'll kill you with these hands." His attacks came with explosive force, but as he charged, Maria countered with another terrifying stab, releasing a blood beam like a bullet straight through the air. Demon dodged barely, only to find Maria right in front of him. "We both want each other dead, so let's end this quickly." She spoke with the same cold tone. Demon roared in reply. "Then come at me." Their speed skyrocketed. Fists and sword clashed dozens of times in the blink of an eye. But this time, there was something different. Maria's strikes now carried blood-infused aura unlike anything Demon had seen before. Her crimson aura intertwined with his Black Lightning, sometimes even overpowering it. Demon gritted his teeth. Where the hell was all this blood coming from? He pushed himself further, forcing his body past its limits just to bring down the girl in front of him. But Maria was unrelenting. With a body of steel, movements of silk, and an aura of death, She was practically untouchable. Yet none of it mattered to Demon. I'd rather die than lose to a damn demon-worshipping freak. With a furious scream, dragon heads formed once again over both his fists, ready to strike. But Maria met him head-on, her blade now surrounded by even more crimson aura. For the first time, emotion flickered across her pale face. I was born in blood, lived in blood, killed in blood, and I continue still. Slash! With a precise strike, Maria carved another deep fissure into Demon's armor. Just as you were born into the Empire and lived a life of honor, I was born among the Ultras and lived my entire life in blood. What makes you think, even for a moment, that you're fit to judge me? Her sword gleamed blood-red, but was caught mid-swing by Demon's darkened fist. Spare me the nonsense. With explosive force, Demon's aura transformed into the massive maw of a lion, roaring in Maria's face. You made your choice. The whole filthy lot of you. You chose this cursed life, so don't come crying now, after everything your hands have done. His black lightning flared, but crimson tendrils of blood wrapped around it, Maria parrying the blast with ease. And what choice are you talking about exactly? The one our ancestors made centuries ago. Boom! Sword and fist collided once more, shaking the battlefield. Demon howled. No. Your choice. What's happening now is proof enough. Though the betrayal that sparked this war began generations ago, the current Ultras had committed their own horrors. The recent abductions, the witch's game, all undeniable. But for the first time since the battle began, Maria laughed. Chapter 396. Maria, too. She actually laughed at Demon's reasoning. With blood-soaked strikes launched at terrifying speed, she overwhelmed him with ruthless precision. I was born and orphaned in the war against the Empire 17 years ago. Demon's blood was injected into my body at age 6. And by 10, I had already become a contracted high blood. The humans of the Ultras continent were nothing more than test subjects to the demons. Every single one of them had been forcibly injected with demonic blood, no exceptions. Most of those who underwent the procedure turned into mindless beasts, living like animals. They were known as the lesser blood. But those who survived the injection and adapted to the demonic blood, they were the greater blood, humans who lived their lives like anyone else. The contract and the blood bound them eternally, making any act of rebellion against their demon master nearly impossible. What choice are you even talking about? Boom! Maria unleashed an even more explosive surge of power. Her blade faster, sharper, deadlier. From the very beginning, it took the Empire only minutes to declare us guilty. Tainted. Domet tudi. They cast us aside and branded us monsters. Not even human anymore, just the same as the demons. Between humans born in the Empire and others born among the Ultras, the difference wasn't in species, but in blood, and that made all the difference. I told you to stop spouting that nonsense. Demon roared, pressing forward with full force, ignoring the cracks spreading across his golden armor, trying to breach Maria's unrelenting defense. You had your chances, and you threw them all away. The gates were sealed years ago. No demons can reach this place anymore. So why do you keep raising your swords against us? You're nothing but lying degenerates. And in the face of that outburst, Maria laughed. For the second time. The gates were sealed? Is that what you really believe, Empire Warrior? Boom! Her aura exploded like never before as she stabbed her own elbow, unleashing a greater torrent of blood than ever before. Her power surged. You fool! If you think for even a moment that a flimsy human seal could keep demons away forever, then you've truly been living in a dream. The world was vast, far beyond what demon could imagine, and Maria made that clear. Wake up. There's no such thing as safety. She declared it outright. The gates were already open. Demon's eyes narrowed in disbelief. But Maria didn't care. Don't misunderstand, Empire Warrior. We don't need your pity. We don't want your help. We chose to fight this war on our own terms a long time ago. Her attacks accelerated, again. Strike after strike crashing into the golden dragon armor, piling up visible damage. But don't think for a second that you and your kind have any right to judge us. Our fate is our own. We lived in blood, and will continue to live that way. With those words, Maria unleashed a crimson cocoon that completely surrounded Demon. Though he managed to block it using his explosive lightning aura. Her strikes were too fast, too precise. She had him cornered. Demon fought back for as long as he could, but eventually he reached his limit. He realized it the moment a sharp pain ripped through him. His right leg. With a blood-soaked slash, Maria severed Demon's leg. Her relentless strikes having focused with cunning precision on one single point. The loss threw him off balance. He crashed to the ground, and before he could react, Maria stood over him, her blade against his throat. "This is the end." She said it plainly. Demon stared up at the sword looming above him, its edge growing before his eyes. In that moment, for the first time, he understood he might actually die. "I won't lose." With a monstrous scream, Demon's lightning aura burst violently outward, flinging Maria away. He rose on one leg and with a desperate swing unleashed a devastating punch. Dragon Gate, Lightning Phantom, a blazing beam of destruction shot forth from his fist, crashing into Maria and launching her through a wall, while his lightning roared behind, trying to incinerate her completely. Maria endured the suicidal attack with difficulty. When the dust settled, she stood again, staring at the blood-drenched man before her. Still upright, still defiant, still bleeding from his severed leg. Ha-ea-wea! With another thunderous scream, Demon funneled every ounce of strength into his armor, responding to his will. The armor pulsed. Then, a golden prosthetic leg formed over his missing limb, shaped entirely from the fume knight armor. Demon stood tall again on two legs. "I don't care about your damned logic, or your hollow words." Panting heavily, he forced the lightning from his body again. "All I know is this. I will kill you here, no matter the cost." His resolve was terrifying. Even half dead, Demon Valerian stood ready to fight again. But Maria wasn't moved, because she too had something unshakable within her. "The same goes for me. I told you from the beginning, I have to kill you. And that's exactly what I'll do." Raising her right palm, she aimed it straight at Demon, ready for the next round. The moment Demon was about to strike, he suddenly froze. Or rather, he couldn't move anymore. "What the?" He screamed in shock as his body seized up. His legs gave in. His arms stopped responding. Then, slowly, his entire body began to float, suspended in the air, completely paralyzed. At the same time, Maria raised her hand toward Dawn, and he, too, was ensnared by the same mysterious force. "What the hell is going on?" Demon struggled violently, but it was no use. "It's useless," Maria said coldly. "I've already seen your blood." With her crimson eyes glowing like rubies, Maria advanced, blood still pouring freely from her wounds. Bloodbind, a terrifying ability that allowed her to control the blood of her enemies. Once she had laid eyes on it. The technique had strict conditions. But in Demon's case, he had already lost too much blood. He no longer had the strength to resist her. This is the end. Using their own blood against them, Maria immobilized both Demon and Dawn, intending to finish them off swiftly. Demon cursed furiously, trying to summon more power, but nothing worked. He could do nothing but watch as the woman who had defeated both him and Dawn prepared to deliver the final blow. But just as she was about to sever their necks, she froze. A new voice echoed across the battlefield. Well, what do we have here?" A young man appeared above the ruined arena, looking down at them with his usual lazy grin. "You seem to be struggling, cousin." "Aegon!" Demon shouted. Maria frowned, narrowing her eyes at the approaching duo. Aegon Valerian and Selena Hemsworth. Right on time, the unexpected reinforcements arrived. Selena fired her magic without hesitation, forcing Maria to retreat. Her spell shattered the bloodbind, freeing both Demon and Dawn. Empyrean Maria, is it? I've heard plenty about you. Drawing his sword, Aegon stepped forward. Let's see what you're really made of. The battle flipped in an instant, from a one-sided slaughter to 4 against 1. By sheer coincidence, Selena's witch mark had led them straight here. Maria blinked slowly, taking in her surroundings. Is this just bad luck? Or something else entirely? It started with Demon arriving the moment she'd defeated Dawn, then Aegon right after she beat Demon. Everyone was being pulled to this exact spot. Only this one. Other elite students had witch marks too. They could have gone anywhere, but they all came to her. That's when Maria glanced at Dawn, lying behind them. A bitter smile crept onto her lips. So that's it. Who would have thought? She'd end up against a boy with unnatural luck. Luck that defied the laws of life itself. The last survivor. No matter what happens, he always survives. Even if others needed help more. Everything had been drawn to him. Now, surrounded by enemies, especially Aegon, whose presence she couldn't even read. Maria realized her odds were non-existent. Clutching her sword, she drove the blade straight into her own chest, right in front of everyone's horrified eyes. It was a good fight. She yanked the blade out, blood gleaming ominously on the edge, then raised it skyward, as a crimson glow exploded from her entire body. Run! Aegon shouted the order just in time. Everyone turned and bolted, his voice slicing through the chaos like lightning. And the moment he screamed, it happened. A bloody explosion erupted from within Maria, unleashing a tidal wave of gore in all directions. A cataclysmic surge that devoured everything in its path. The battle had ended in a way no one could have predicted, with a crimson explosion that painted the field in blood. Chapter 397. Battles of Life and Death 1. The entire battlefield shifted the moment Maria drove that slender sword into her own chest. With a gentle smile on her face, she realized there was no way she could win a fight against 4 people, especially not with Prince Aegon Valyrian among them. So she chose to end it. From within her fragile frame, an overwhelming torrent of blood surged out. Far too much to belong to a single person. It spread across the battlefield like a ruptured dam, soaking everything and everyone in its path. Then, without warning, the crimson tide ignited. At Maria's signal, the blood detonated, red flames engulfing the entire area in a massive explosion. It was a suicidal strike from the Empyrean who had been completely cornered. Even though she had already defeated Dawn, and then Demon afterward, the last survivor's ability had already done its work. A mysterious power that defied the world's 5 unbreakable laws. Faced with such a power, Maria had no choice. Victory was simply out of reach. Even if she had managed to defeat all 4 somehow, a 5th or a 6th might have appeared. Dawn would always receive whatever he needed to survive. It wasn't fair to the others, but it was his fate. A burden he had to carry until the final breath of his life. The Blood Blossom Bomb. That was the name of the technique Maria had unleashed, leveling the entire area, while the others fled to avoid being caught in the blast radius. But at the very last second, Selena intervened, just in time, casting a thin yet formidable barrier around herself and her allies. Her magic was swift, and she managed to construct a shield strong enough to repel the wave of blood-fueled destruction. Standing within the square-shaped barrier, everyone stared at the blood that continued to pour down like a storm. Where is all this blood even coming from? Selena shouted in frustration, struggling to hold the barrier intact. But there was no answer. Maria and her strange powers remained an enigma. A few seconds passed. Eventually, the tide of blood calmed and dried across the scorched ground, revealing the battlefield once more. But Maria was nowhere to be found. She had vanished from sight. She wasn't trying to kill us, Aegon said as he slid his sword into its sheath. She was carving herself an escape route. Not bad. On the other side, Demon Valerian removed his armor, though he kept it wrapped around what remained of his right leg, because that foot was never coming back. The look of fury on Demon's face was impossible to miss. No one dared approach him. Even though he hadn't technically lost, and had been ready to keep fighting, Maria had managed to completely immobilize him and remove him from the battle. That, to him, was no different from defeat. He would have died, if not for the prince's and Selena's intervention. "Damn it!" Demon roared, punching the ground beneath him with burning rage. They had survived, but the taste it left in his mouth was bitter beyond words. "Let's move," Aegon said calmly. "We're done here." He began walking and the others followed. "But where to?" Dawn asked, uncertain. After realizing that the gate they had pinned their hopes on was nothing but a trap, they were lost again, back to square one. Only this time it felt even worse. Yet Aegon Valerian didn't seem the least bit concerned. "We'll find the others first," he replied. "This battle won't last much longer. We've already reached the end." Whether it was the Empire or the Ultras, the hunt was nearly over. But the outcome was still uncertain. And so the four of them set out, on a journey to regroup with the rest of their scattered comrades, each of whom was fighting their own deadly war. "Ha!" Maria's breath came out as red-tinged mist in the cold air. She walked slowly, one hand pressed to her chest, the other gripping the wall for balance. Her black coat and once elegant white outfit were drenched in blood. "I've gone too far this time." Maria's ability made her stronger the more she hurt herself, stronger the more blood she shed. But in exchange, her wounds took a very long time to heal. The gash in her hand that she had stabbed multiple times, her bleeding chest, they remained open as she bled in waves of burning pain. And yet, Maria's calm expression never faltered. Not even for a moment. It was clear she had grown used to pain, a long time ago. Once she was far enough from the battlefield, she raised her gaze to the night sky above. "I wonder if Lord Murgo has completed his mission." She spoke softly, pulling a golden pocket watch from her coat. Time was flowing slowly, but inevitably. The end was near, and everyone could feel it. Empyrean Maria versus Dawn Polaris. Another round ended in the Empire's favor. While Maria was locked in combat with the others, a far more violent battle erupted elsewhere, one of pure vengeance. Cerys Moonlight unleashed her full might against Baelor Moonlight. The icy flower tattoos covering her right arm were the same ones that had once appeared in the distant past, when she had lost control. But this time, Cerys wielded her power with complete intent. The marks stopped advancing once they reached her shoulder, limiting the awakening to one arm only. "This is my current limit." After countless days of relentless training, she had barely managed to reach this point. The ice flower ability burns through aura at an insane rate, but in return it grants overwhelming power. Fully aware of this cost, Cerys threw everything she had at Baelor Moonlight. With a flick of her hand, 6 celestial orbs materialized. But these weren't ordinary orbs. They were massive spheres, planets, in a sense, infused with the frigid aura of her ice flower, each brimming with destructive force. Serpents hissed around her, conjured by her aura, all lunging at Baelor with wrath. Cerys herself charged in, sword drawn, clad in a crystalline shield of frost. She was all in. Every ounce of strength she had forged through pain and training. She used it in a single goal, to kill this man. "So that shard of ice has taught you to control your power," Baelor muttered, finally growing serious. "Even if you're barely able to withstand it." Suddenly, the 6 planetary orbs fired icy beams of devastating scale. Baelor endured them with his body, dodging the serpents and clashing directly with Cerys in brutal close-quarters combat. The tattoos on Cerys's arm glowed more intensely with every blow she struck. "You won't be able to defeat me, Cerys. The difference in rank between us is far too great." With his bare hands, Baelor crushed the white serpents one after another, blocking the orb's constant bombardment. "I'll admit it, you're strong. Reaching this level at your age is nothing short of a miracle." Ceres's aura output far exceeded the S-rank threshold, something considered impossible for someone of her age. But her opponent was Balor, a towering, insurmountable foe. I let my guard down once, which allowed you to land a hit. Boom! Summoning dozens of his own celestial orbs, Balor retaliated, overwhelming Ceres's frozen planets and nullifying them completely. That won't happen again. With a single punch, he shattered her swords and regained control of the battlefield. This struggle is meaningless. Shut that damned mouth of yours, Ceres roared, pushing herself further, summoning every last drop of latent power she could muster. Even knowing her enemy outclassed her in every way, she refused to back down. Do you think you'll continue to escape, no matter what atrocities your hands have committed? The frozen orb spun faster, launching a relentless barrage of icy projectiles, veiling Balor's vision entirely. Seizing the opportunity, Ceres pierced his domain and closed the distance. The souls of those you killed in the past. One day, they'll coil around your neck to announce your end. She slammed her marked hand against his chest, ready to finish it. Balor's eyes widened in shock as her aura exploded at point-blank range. Ceres bore the pain, unleashing the most powerful technique she had ever created. Her final hope to end the man who had taken so much from her. Ice formation, supreme art, inverted butterfly wings. The enhanced ice aura erupted in Balor's face, consuming him in its entirety. The power surged outward in a blinding storm, and from within it, massive wings of frost bloomed, shaped like the wings of a giant butterfly, encasing Ceres at the center. She had poured everything into that one attack. The strain was so immense, her tattoos began bleeding from her arm. But it was worth it. That was a finishing move, powerful enough to kill even an SS-ranked awakened. The mountainous terrain where the battle took place had become a field of frozen death. Frost mist veiled everything, obscuring vision with a chilling fog. Ceres couldn't tell if her attack had succeeded, but she knew she had reached her limit. She could barely remain standing in this form. Her body was breaking. She had risked it all, hoping this overwhelming attack would be enough to kill Balor. But reality had other plans. Just as she was about to collapse, Balor, still standing, grabbed her by the wrist, the one etched with tattoos, and gazed at her in a way that sent fresh terror flooding through her. Amazing, truly amazing. With one hand gripping hers tightly, Balor touched his chest with the other. There, a long, bloody wound stretched from his collarbone to his abdomen. If your attack had been just a bit stronger, you might have actually killed me. Chapter 398. Battles of Life and Death, 2. Ceres had been smart. She had concealed her trump card until the very last second, unleashing it only after breaching his defense. But even her strongest ultimate skill hadn't been enough. Let's deal with this strange power of yours first. His voice was grim, his face terrifying. Without hesitation, Balor tightened his grip on her right arm. Seconds later, a scream tore through the battlefield. Ceres's scream. As Balor ripped her arm off, tearing it from her body in a brutal burst of violence. She crashed to the ground, blood gushing from the wound without pause. Balor held the tattooed arm, now severed and limp, before freezing it solid in one swift motion. Then, just like shattering glass, he crushed it into pieces. Ceres stared up at him with bloodshot, defiant eyes, refusing to give in, even if it meant her death. Clenching her teeth against the pain radiating from her severed limb, she stood once more with a scream of sheer will, forming ice around the stump. Her breath came in rasps as she summoned the last dregs of her aura, forging a new arm of ice in its place. Panting, trembling, Ceres tried to fight back again. Balor looked at her, genuinely impressed. Your determination, it's astounding. Shut up. With a roar, Ceres conjured a blazing ice flame around her new hand and attempted to launch it. But Balor was faster. He appeared in front of her in a flash, and blood spilled once more. With a blade made of his own power, he drove it into her chest without mercy, flipping her world upside down. I told you, all your desperate efforts are meaningless. You cannot defeat me. With calm cruelty, Baylor slowly pulled the blade out, then whispered beside her ear. This world remembers only the victors. There is no place for the cries of the defeated. The winner writes the rules. The winner decides who is right and who is wrong, who deserves to live, and who must die. Grabbing her by the throat, Baylor snarled. I am the victor, Ceres. I am the one who survived. You fought for some ideal, tried to take revenge on me. And where did that bring you? To death. You are the loser, Ceres Moonlight. And in this world, there is no place for losers. Coldly, he began tightening his grip around her neck. Ceres writhed in agony. And it was true. Just as Baylor said, she had lost, and she was about to die. But at that very moment, Dawn Polaris had already emerged victorious from his battle with Maria, which meant the last survivor's blessing was no longer active. No longer were fate and probability being pulled toward Dawn. And that's when he appeared. A pillar of flame crashed down from the sky like a waterfall of wrath. Baylor's eyes widened as someone ripped Ceres from his grasp. Icy blue eyes met burning crimson ones. Phoenix sunlight held Ceres tightly in his right arm, and with his left, he unleashed a searing blast of fire that engulfed Baylor, launching him hundreds of meters away. Keep your filthy hands off her. The impact of Phoenix's fire was monstrous, blasting Baylor like a meteor strike. Without warning, the young lord of the Sunlight House took to the skies, carrying Ceres in his arms. When the dazed and wounded girl opened her eyes with difficulty, she saw herself cradled in his embrace. She recognized him, but he wasn't the same Phoenix she knew. His once auburn hair now blazed like wildfire, and glowing red auras burned around his eyes. His very presence radiated such heat that Ceres, despite her freezing constitution, found herself sweating uncontrollably. Professor, Phoenix, don't speak. You're badly hurt. Flying at full speed, he rushed them both away from the battlefield. Let's focus on getting out of here first. In his ultimate awakened form, Phoenix was like a shooting star, a burning comet ripping through the sky. How did you find me so quickly? Ceres asked, trying to freeze the gaping wound in her chest. She had been ready to die only moments ago, until Phoenix appeared like a miracle and pulled her back. His answer came brief, focused on the path ahead. I managed to repel one of their lords, and then I moved right away to search for you. I felt your aura the moment you unleashed your final attack. With a faint smile, Phoenix praised Ceres. You've done well to survive this far. Leave the rest to me. The young lord of the Sunlight House was incredibly fast. Even though he'd found himself up against Godfrey, one of the Ultra's lords equal to his level, he had still managed to drive him back, soaring like a blazing comet to rescue his students. He wasn't considered the greatest talent of his family for nothing. But that didn't mean the battle was over. Because just as they began to gain some distance from the battlefield, the ground trembled. A monstrous presence stomped toward them, shaking the earth with each step. Lord Godfrey had returned, charging with sheer fury. His golden armor shattered, half his face charred black by Phoenix's devastating flames. Yet even now, he held on to his twin daggers, eyes locked onto the enemy who had humiliated him. This bastard. He just won't stay down, Phoenix muttered. Without hesitation, he turned around, still holding Ceres in one arm, and raised his free hand toward the sky. This time, I'll finish it properly. His hand ignited, and within seconds, his flames had engulfed the heavens. Godfrey, roaring like a beast, leapt into the air, cloaked in a terrifying violet aura. He was a monster born for war, lacking in intellect but overflowing with killing intent. Yet Phoenix showed no fear, completely unmoved by the lethal aura crashing toward him. He wasn't the most experienced. He wasn't even a good leader. But on the battlefield, he was a true monster, a warrior who had never lost a single fight in his life. Eternal Flame Style, Eternal Blaze, Grand Phoenix Inferno. His fire surged and twisted, forming a colossal phoenix wreathed in divine flames. The phoenix let out a deafening screech, illuminating the night sky before it dove straight toward Godfrey in a blazing fury. Despite his massive size, Godfrey looked like an insect before that heavenly beast. And then, without warning, the fire consumed him. All of him, the earth around him, the sky above. Everything was scorched in a sea of flame. Phoenix's fire was so intense, it could melt metal and burn flesh straight off the bone. Godfrey found himself trapped in that hell, flailing, burning alive, while Phoenix calmly soared higher, leaving him behind. He didn't bother watching his enemy writhe. He had already done what needed to be done. Still, the flames of the eternal blaze raged on, devouring Godfrey over and over again. No matter how hard he fought, he couldn't escape, and death drew closer with each second, until a wall of ice crashed down from above, smothering the inferno in one clean sweep. Balor had arrived just in time, freezing the eternal blaze with every ounce of his power. He sighed while watching Phoenix fly off into the distance. That damned Phoenix. He's grown far stronger than the last time I saw him. He wasn't called the brightest prodigy of his generation for nothing. Get up, Godfrey. We're not done here. Expressionless, Balor began walking toward the direction their enemies had fled, while the scorched and half-burned Godfrey dragged himself behind him. They may have escaped for now, but they have nowhere to go. Our armies are already surrounding the region. Wherever they run, the enemy will always be waiting ahead. This isn't over yet. Chapter 399. Snow Lionheart vs. V. The Witch's game was nearing its end. Anyone who had witnessed the brutal battles unfolding could sense it. The elite class, after securing victory in many of their individual duels, had gained a bit of breathing room, unaware that a massive army had once been lying in wait. And it was Fry Starlight alone who held that army at bay, facing Murgo in a hidden battle no one else even knew had taken place. But what Fry did was not victory. It was merely a delay, buying them time. The 1,000 soldiers he faced were only the vanguard, the front lines of just one region. There were still 3 other regions, each dispatching an army of equal or greater strength. And they were coming for him and his friends. Led by the remaining Ultras and Hollow, these armies crept closer to the center, slowly encircling Fry and the others who had earned only a few precious minutes with their final desperate stand. Among all the elite students, Frey's closest friends were still locked in battle with their opponents. And perhaps the fiercest fight of all was the one between Snow Lionheart, the Empire's champion, and the masked warrior V, the Ultra's greatest hope. But this was no battle between heroes. It was a clash of monsters, raging wildly against one another. Snow had invoked his War King form, a state that drove him into a bloodthirsty frenzy, while V unleashed a transformation of his own, the Berserker form, a jet-black armor spiraling around him as his eyes turned pure white, hollow, and insane. Their screams shook the earth, echoing alongside the violent clashes between Moonlight Edge and Vermithor. To withstand V's black flames, Snow was forced to wield every element at his disposal. Even so, the fight remained barely balanced. V's fire was unlike anything else. It burned everything, even aura itself. Add to that the Moonlight Edge's strange aura, capable of erasing all other energies, and V's offensive power became something beyond comprehension. If not for Snow's War King form and the Vermithor reinforcing his body, he wouldn't have lasted a second. He was far stronger than the last time they fought, yet still unable to overcome V. The very idea infuriated him. So, with all his might, he began tearing through the flames using his masterful technique. The fourth sword, the World Severer, empowered by stellar aura, Snow sliced through the dark fire, sending a wave of pure energy that split it in two. Knowing it wasn't enough, he used the technique again, and again, and again. Over and over, World Severer roared through the battlefield, slowly gaining ground against the undying inferno. But V didn't stand idle. The moment Snow pushed forward, the masked warrior rushed him, gathering the scattered black flames into a giant flaming skull. its maw opening wide to devour him whole. "You won't beat me." V's offense was monstrous, even if his defense was weak. But the jet-black armor coiling around him covered that weakness, making him almost impossible to injure. Absolute Zero. Summoning all his aura, white fire born from pure frost gathered at the edge of Vermithor. A massive ice cannon surged forth, colliding with the skull of black fire, both forces swallowing each other whole. V's flames were stronger, but Snow had bought just enough time to escape the blast using his void step. And then, activating it again, he reappeared beside V, sword blazing with the most powerful form of stellar aura. Their blades clashed. Again and again. Blow after blow, they fought at insane speed, like demons in human skin. V's attack power was undeniably stronger, but Snow was far faster. Harnessing his multitude of elements, he fought with a fluid, adaptive style, granting him a freedom his enemies lacked. And when combined with his overwhelming War King form, Snow stood as V's equal. Minutes passed. The two exchanged a torrent of strikes, shattering the earth, tearing through mountains, obliterating everything in their path. They had reached a stalemate. No matter how hard they fought, neither could gain the upper hand. They could only keep attacking until one of them fell. There were no thoughts in their minds anymore, only instinct. Their bodies had become machines programmed for one purpose: kill. To the last breath, to the final heartbeat. They would fight to the death. A storm of swords engulfed them. Their battle had become a war of pure aura. Snow's elemental storm and V's abyssal fire collided like natural disasters, earthquakes of power that never ceased. "I won't lose," they both screamed with the same raw fury, again and again. "I won't lose to him." For both Snow and V, they were the pinnacle of the lands they came from. Victory for one meant dominion for an entire continent over another. And so, defeat was no longer an option. No matter how brutally they clashed, no matter how much blood they lost, neither of them could gain the upper hand. They were perfectly matched. An even duel that pushed both to their absolute limits, devouring their strength at a dangerous pace. And both knew it. The battle was heading toward a dead end. Why won't this son of a bitch fall? They thought the same thing at the same time, unleashing even fiercer attacks. One wielded the blessing of the Lightbringer, a divine gift that elevated him far above his peers. The other, a demonic contract with one of the world's most powerful devils, paired with a raw talent that stood at the very peak of all ultras since their rise. Monsters like these couldn't be defeated by anything less than monsters of equal caliber. Minutes passed. The battlefield turned crimson with their blood, soaking the ground without pause. Vermithor was filled with divine power, an energy that allowed Snow's body to regenerate after each devastating blow. V, on the other hand, was accumulating damage, yet the masked warrior never stopped. At some point, both fighters' vision began to blur. They had unleashed powers that shouldn't exist in beings of their level. It was clear. This had to end. Now, tapping into the last of his demonic strength, V allowed the dark flames to engulf him completely, transforming him into something no longer human. Like a dam bursting, black fire erupted outward in a wave of annihilation, swallowing the battlefield and extending for kilometers. Snow immediately leapt into the sky, fleeing the encroaching inferno. "You're not going anywhere." With a flick of his hand, V commanded the black fire to rise into the heavens, threatening to consume the sky itself. Snow looked like an insect in the face of this hellish tide. Flames that threatened to burn him alive at any second. But he didn't flinch. Suspended in the sky, he raised his blade. Snow roared, fusing all his elements into a singular aura that shifted in color again and again, until it swelled with terrifying pressure. Then, with all his might, he swung his sword downward.
Grand cosmique formation.
His strongest attack, an explosive wave of nuclear force, descended like a star into the heart of V's black flames. Two cataclysmic forces collided in the skies, unleashing an apocalyptic blast that rocked the entire region. And after a long, drawn-out clash, something unbelievable happened. Both attacks pierced through each other, shattering space and time in their wake. V's flames struck Snow. Snow's grand cosmic formation detonated upon V. There was no more aura left to defend. No power remaining to resist. They had no choice but to endure the incoming destruction. And so both of them fell, crashing violently to the ground, their bodies shattered by the very attacks they had unleashed. It was a catastrophic end to a battle that had brought nothing but devastation. Buried beneath the wreckage, V was the first to move, barely conscious as he threw a shattered scream into the air, gasping for breath. Agonizing pain racked his body. Snow's slash had cut clean through him, from shoulder to abdomen, nearly splitting him in two. He couldn't even stand. He collapsed instantly, his body writhing in unbearable pain. The slash wasn't his only wound. His entire body had collapsed under the might of grand cosmic formation. Lying face down, V fought the agony with all he had, searching for his opponent. It took only a few seconds before he found him. Snow Lionheart was in no better shape. His body was charred black, his flesh scorched so thoroughly by the dark flames that his face was barely recognizable. His injuries were immense, enough to leave him unconscious. What was even more terrifying was that some of V's dark fire had embedded itself into Snow's left arm, still eating away at him from within. If not for Vermithor struggling to suppress the corruption, Snow would have already been dead. The black fire didn't stop even after hitting its target. It still burned, crawling slowly toward Snow's motionless body. With the last flicker of awareness, V manipulated the lingering flames, directing them toward his enemy. His broken mask finally gave way, revealing a bloodied grin. Then came the laugh. V laughed like a madman before finally passing out. Burn in hell. And with that, he collapsed too. Even to the end, they had remained equals. But V's crawling fire was about to break the stalemate. Snow's War King form had already faded. He was unconscious, defenseless, and the black flames were about to consume him. The hero of the Empire was on the verge of death. But just before the flames could reach him, a hail of arrows fell from above, bombarding the ground and scattering the black fire, forcing it to shift away. At the same time, Lara Croft leapt gracefully into the battlefield, rushing straight toward the fallen Snow. When she reached him, Lara couldn't stop herself from gasping in horror. Staring down at the scorched, barely recognizable body of Snow Lionheart, she stood frozen in shock. The black fire was still crawling across his left arm, trying to consume the rest of his body. Without hesitation, Lara cut off his arm. "You'll be okay. You'll be okay. You're not going to die." With Snow strapped to her back, she dashed away, weaving through the flames with remarkable agility. Luckily, she hadn't completely left the battlefield, just far enough to stay clear of their overwhelming attacks. She had watched everything from afar, using her sniper's scope to observe from extreme distances. She wanted to help, but in a battle between monsters like V and Snow, her abilities were useless. "Don't die on me, Snow. Please don't die in my arms." Her mind had gone completely blank. Carrying Vermithor in her hands, with Snow on her back, the only sign of life was the faint pulse she could feel from him. It was the only thing telling her he was still alive. Once they were far enough from the battlefield, Lara stopped the bleeding from his severed arm and placed the sword back onto his chest. Vermithor's light began healing him instantly, but his condition was horrifying. His face completely charred beyond recognition. She had never seen anyone survive injuries like that before. She was terrified. Trapped in the barren lands of the Ultras, Vermithor's sacred light was her only hope. And so, she sat there, helpless, unsure what to do, while Snow writhed in agony beside her. Snow Lionheart versus V. The battle had ended in a draw, one that tasted like defeat for the Empire. The shock waves of their clash could be felt kilometers away. Yet the final round of the Witches' game was still far from over. Chapter 400. Sansa versus Adriana. The Witches' game would never be complete, unless the witch herself took part. That had always been the unspoken rule. But it seemed the witch's battle was already over. Hovering in the sky beside the red gate, Beatrice, inside Adriana's body, let out a sigh of disappointment. Sansa Valerian, is that really all you've got? Her face showed clear disappointment as she stared down at Sansa. The girl lay inside a massive crater of destruction, her body broken and drenched in blood. She had lost, completely. Adriana had overwhelmed her with a terrifying gap in power. I didn't expect you to be this weak. What happened to the strength you once showed me? The terrifying shadows that once struck fear into the fiercest of nightmare creatures. For years, Beatrice had lived inside the temple, using Adriana's body as a vessel. In other words, Beatrice had lived among Fry and his companions for nearly 2 years now. Among them all, Sansa had always caught her interest. The girl's demonic power was unique. Are you holding back because I'm your friend? You're breaking my tiny little heart. Adriana laughed loudly as Sansa slowly pushed herself up. Shut that damn mouth of yours. Staring at her battered body and the wounds she had sustained just from exchanging attacks, Sansa realized that winning this battle was almost impossible. If I could still control my power like before, I could have beaten her. But that was no longer possible. The will of the demon seed inside her, the one that once helped her wield that power, was long gone. Even though Adriana was the weakest of Beatrice's puppets, she was still far too powerful for Sansa now. Knowing this, the princess gritted her teeth and tried once more to summon her strength. A massive shadow formed beneath her feet. Trying again? Sorry, darling, but your shadows are too weak. With a wave of her hand, Adriana summoned dozens of celestial spheres once more, releasing a tremendous pressure that made Sansa flinch instinctively. I know I can't fight like that demon did. That wild and violent combat style was gone, buried somewhere deep inside her. But I'm not a demon. I'm human. So I'll fight like a human. Gathering her shadow around her, the darkness slowly crawled across her body. Sansa was trying something that made Adriana narrow her eyes. What are you trying to do? Instead of attacking with the shadow, Sansa wrapped it around herself. She focused intensely, trying to recall a memory that had once captivated her. This is the way I want to fight. Just like her. Just like the girl who had once wrapped her power around herself, forming a pure white shield of ice. Now the shadows tightened around Sansa's body, forming a similar, but darker armor. The pressure in the battlefield shifted. Finally, after pouring everything she had, Sansa reached that form. Using her power to create armor around herself, she now looked entirely different. Unlike Cerys's ninja-like form, Sansa's was something else entirely. The jet-black armor clung to her body, forming a pair of wings and a crown of horns rising above her head and dark hair. She looked exactly like demon. Adriana burst out laughing as she watched the dramatic transformation unfold before her eyes. You said you'd fight like a human, yet now you take on a form that resembles a demon. What a delicious contradiction. Ignoring her laughter, Sansa stomped the ground with force and shot toward her opponent. She was eager to test her new power as soon as possible. Adriana immediately bombarded her with dozens of flaming projectiles using her celestial spheres, but Sansa deflected them effortlessly, her wings wrapping around her in defense. Then, reaching out her hand toward Adriana. Within seconds, a massive shadowy hand formed and lunged forward, trying to consume the witch entirely. But the giant hand came to a sudden halt as it slammed into a thin barrier that had manifested just in time. Adriana twirled her staff with a grin. Crush her for me. Responding to her command, a giant foot materialized in the sky and came crashing down on Sansa's head, aiming to flatten her into the earth. But Sansa, acting on pure instinct, conjured dozens of black tendrils that shot out from her back like magic. The tendrils instantly wrapped around the descending foot, halting it completely. And like serpents, they slithered upward, coiling tighter until the entire construct exploded into pieces. Without pause, Sansa redirected the tendrils to attack Adriana. But as they closed in, Adriana began teleporting, vanishing and reappearing each time just before impact, effortlessly dodging the attacks as she flew through the air, laughing all the while. "How wonderful! Your strength has grown so much." She continued to taunt and toy with Sansa, who said nothing in return. The princess pursued her relentlessly, determined to end the fight as fast as possible, especially as she began to feel something odd. The shadows building up inside her body, giving her an unsettling feeling she couldn't ignore. "Kill her for me." With a flick of her wrist, reality twisted once again around Adriana. In a surreal shift, dozens of magical cannons and firearms manifested out of nowhere. Hundreds of them, all aimed directly at Sansa, surrounding her completely. And without warning, they opened fire in unison, unleashing a relentless barrage. Sansa had no choice but to wrap her wings tightly around herself, bracing for impact. Adriana, on the other hand, was clearly enjoying herself. "Even after boosting your power like this, the gap between us is still immense, dear Sansa." Trapped in a hellish storm of gunfire, Sansa was at the mercy of the witch, who was merely playing with her. "At this rate, you really will die here." With another motion of her hand, swords and spears materialized alongside the firearms, pointing at Sansa from all directions. "Let's end this game before it gets boring." With that playful grin on her face, Beatrice, from within Adriana's body, prepared to bring the battle to its conclusion. Sansa Valyrian versus Adriana. The battle was about to enter its final stage.